Is it on? Hello? All right, guys. Welcome to the afternoon session. I hope you guys managed to network a bit and the lunch was effective. What we are going to do now is we are going to have a panel which is kind of a conversational theme about EODB. Who knows what the full form of EODB is? Everybody knows it. Okay, all right. So the whole idea is to try to analyze certain issues that we are facing and come up with certain solutions that we think. And just for this, we've got three panelists. The first one is Pooja Arora. Pooja, if you can have a seat right here. We have Harish Zaveri. I hope I pronounced your name right. And Honish, sorry about that. And we have Krishna Kumar Devnali. Okay, guys, this is your mic, so do share your mic. This is, huh? Yeah, those seem to be creating some issues in the mixer. So that's the mic for the live streaming audience. Yeah, no. This mic is for the live streaming audience. Really? Yeah, you can hold it off. Yeah, so hold it the speaker. Yeah, you're good. We can hear you. The voice here.
All right, welcome back everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I am the self-appointed chair of this panel. I was appointed by nobody. I'll begin by acknowledging the wonderful perspectives in this room actually. Many thanks to the organizers, Tushar, Mr. Ajay and the rest of the team because the intellectual entrepreneurship this presents is unparalleled in Indian history actually. So a round of applause. Alright, so I'm just going to introduce the context of this panel and then we'll have 3 minutes opening remarks by my co-panelists and then a quick question and answer session. We'll be done within 30 minutes. So guys, this particular session is about unshackling India's entrepreneurial spirit, ease of doing business in India. I want you to imagine an India where opening a business and getting out of a business is as simple as unlocking and locking your phone. Ease of doing business may sound like a bureaucratic term, but at its heart, it's about freedom. The freedom for individuals to turn ideas into reality without obstacles. In the spirit of liberty and innovation, let's explore how India is streamlining governance, boosting economic dynamism, and expanding individual freedom in business within this session. Or are we? Are we as Indians convinced that this is happening? We've had great history lessons from Mr. Das and Ajay, and now we'll come back to 2014 and beyond. While the progress has been remarkable, no one is claiming that every hurdle is gone. India is a vast nation and some bureaucratic inefficiencies still linger. For example, securing land permits or other approvals can be slow, and investors have noted that heavy paperwork in certain areas continues to deter projects. Old habits and complex regulations die hard. Red tape and corruption remain challenges. There are government offices that still move at the pace of a turtle in a slow motion movie. It's important to acknowledge these realities because doing so shows that we have not become complacent. Each remaining obstacle is a call to action for further reform. The good news is that India's citizenry is awake to these challenges and wants to address them head on. There is greater political will today to simplify laws and hold officials accountable than ever before. Even global observers like Moody's note that efforts to reduce corruption and streamline processes are encouraging. and if effectively implemented will spur even higher growth in India. In other words, the journey isn't over, but the direction is firmly set. Every year brings new improvements, whether it's a new bankruptcy law to help businesses exit smoothly, further cuts in corporate tax rates to boost investment, or smarter infrastructure that connects remote regions to markets. India is learning and iterating, moving steadily towards an environment where anyone with a great idea can make it a reality without undue interference. The rise in India's ease of doing business is more than an economic statistics. It is a story about freedom reclaiming the driver's seat in our society. Can government processes shed their role as a meddlesome bureaucrat and instead become a partner in our progress? Can we all stop being the Sadilals for a minute? It reaffirms a principle at the core of libertarian thought. When individuals are free to innovate and trade, society as a whole prospers. One is reminded of Adam Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, India is turning the page from a regime of red tape to a regime where it lays down the red carpets for enterprise. The task now is to keep this momentum going, to continue trimming the dead wood of outdated regulation, to invest in infrastructure and education, and to ensure that prosperity reaches every corner of this country. If we stay the course, the payoff is immense. That an India where individual freedom and economic opportunity feed into each other, creating unprecedented growth and innovation. Let us envision that future today. An India bustling with startups, factories, and markets, where doing business is not a maze but a straight road. And let us work together to make it a reality. This is not about higher rankings of foreign investment. It's about empowering 1.4 billion people to write their own success stories. Ease of doing business is ultimately the ease of living a life of purpose and dignity. With that optimism and resolve, India is showing how freedom and prosperity go hand in hand. And to that, let us all raise a toast today with hopefully a digitally paid cup of chai and vada pav to the beautiful entrepreneurial future of India. And with this, I hand over the stage to my co-panelist, Mr. Zaveri.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, so that was a pretty powerful speech, Pooja. So, on ease of doing business, I just want to know how many of you are running your own business here. So, okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think more than you people can actually start with. I would want to know what is your experience so far in filing. So I started mine. So I have Kiani Ventures, which is into wealth management and angel investments and all. And I deal with startups almost on a daily basis and all. And there are several issues. One is like patent filing takes a lot of time. Patent registration takes a lot of time. I myself have not got my GST number yet. I applied twice. I got rejected twice. Some CA friend of mine has told me that you go to the Pune, so I work from, I stay in Pune, and he has told me to go to the Pune registration office and you give some pack of mithais, and then you get a GST number. So that's what I haven't gone yet, yeah, I mean that's on a lighter note, but it's on a serious note. There has been some, in India there has been some, everybody talks of ease of doing business, but in reality we actually don't know what ease of doing business is, because the mindset of the government is of command and control. You see, forget about business. Recently, I don't know if you guys read that government wanted to reduce AC 20 to 28. I mean, is there any rationale for that? What is the market failure that government is trying to do? So the mindset is one of command and control. GST was sold in 2017-18 as a good and simple tax. Everybody else who has filed GST or has applied knows that it is anything but good and simple tax. It is just another way of extracting more revenue now. So we don't know actually what we are trying to achieve. Government is obsessed with maximizing taxation revenues at any cost. It is not focused on tax simplification and making the life of taxpayers easy or something like that. If it makes life of taxpayers easy, automatically the compliance laws will be. But that's not how the government thinks in this country. That's why these problems. And land, labor codes were done in 20, they are still not notified by the central. These are the challenges in India we have. So in the ground level, I don't think we have that much of ease of doing business in India as of now. There has been some intent, but it's not an integrated way that we have moved forward. Yeah, I would like to hand over Mr.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thanks to the Libertarian community and summit to have given me this opportunity, inviting me here. I won't, paint a grimmer picture here. Rather, I'm an optimist, so I never talk about problems. Problems are there, but that's why solutions are there. That's what my take is. And India is the best place to be in because we have many problems. And for us, every solution can be a startup, is what I feel. I will just simply say that I am a product of this liberalization. We are talking about 1991 because I passed out my electronics engineering in 1989. My first job I got in 1990, and India was staring this bankruptcy. So I have lived this entire evolution, what you call, myself. So I'm not talking about anything red. I'm talking about from my own experience. I joined government company first, Andrew Yule. We got a project of telecommunication modernization of railways. So with opening of the economy, what happened was modernization was the new buzzword. It gave opportunities to engineer like me because till that time we only had options of government job or struggling private industry, which was struggling on. We talked about license Raj and Inspector Raj and everything. But 91 was I would say, sunrise year, and I felt it because I got my first opportunity thanks to this opening of economy. Project I did with the railways, I got opportunity to work with Motorola, and Motorola came out with wireless technology, and telecom boom took place in 1994 onwards with pager, cellular phone, trunking radio. All the wireless technologies you talk about were launched in those years, and luckily I have been the part of that team which launched this in India. I was working with Motorola for 7 years. Then after working and leaving Motorola, I founded my first company called Kriti Infocom. And that's where I first hit the roadblock of facing those challenges that we are talking about. And I have come hard way from that first company that I floated in 2001 to today. I have founded 4 companies till date. But then the scenario has changed drastically. The first 4 years that I ran my first company, I faced many issues. But today I can say that it is quite simplified compared to what I faced that time. When I founded my first company, there was nothing called as ecosystem, nothing called as government supporting any business, or still there were so many approvals to be taken. It was all offline, right? Cut to current scenario. Last 10 years I am into education and entrepreneurial domain. I am an angel investor. I am helping startups from concept level to the first funding as a co-founder or as an advisor. I have seen startups, how they have grown in last 10 years, and it has really, I have seen lots of changes in that. So I think I will leave with that kind of statement, because it's still, I think we are living in a better environment than we were in 1991. 1991 should not be a benchmark, I feel, because many of you were not born at that time, I think. So you won't relate with what had happened then. So it's better to probably benchmark ourselves to probably a decade or 2 decades back. And I always say that you, instead of competing with others, you compete with yourself. So what India can do should be your question, rather than how we can beat China. If we think about how we can better ourselves, automatically China will be taken care of. That's what is my view. Thank you.
plan. They just came out with it a week back. And chapter 1 of that plan is about cutting red tape. People usually take the United States as the example of not having red tape and even doing business and whatnot. But even they think that they've got a lot of red tape to promote innovation in AI. So I think my first question to both of you, and I think we can just go to Mr. Zaveri and then to you, is that what do you think has changed in the last 10 years? Let's not go to 1991. Let's just start with the last 10 years. What has changed after Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014?
Specific to terms of AI or in general?
No, in general. In general.
Yeah, to some extent, few things have changed, right? So when I registered my LLP last year, the process was pretty hassle-free. No visit to government offices, everything is digital, online. You just submit your papers, all the documents, and it does getting my passport also was much more easier. Passport renewed rather, not getting the passport, but getting my passport renewed. I just renewed it 2-3 years ago, and the process was fairly smooth, like just 2 visits to passport office, and it got couriered to my home. So few things have definitely changed. In fact, UPI is a very significant change that has happened. Like this much nowadays, I don't carry cash only from Pune. At least in Pune, though nobody uses cash. Even if you have to pay for chai 10 rupees, they will say, "Okay, don't do it through UPI." In Mumbai, still some rickshaws do ask for cash. So in Pune, it's completely on UPI. Don't carry cash at all actually. So in that way, a lot of things have changed. But at the ground level, when it comes to at the state level or at the local level, there are a lot of things that still need change. So there was a report from Prosperity, which is an institution which is working on land and labor reforms. They came up with a report in 24, and everybody should read that report. They said that land regulations in this country, either 50% of the factory land. I mean, they are talking of commercial land, but that is again applicable to residential as well. So 50% of the land that the entrepreneur buys is actually, they can use only 50% of the land, because other 50% of the land is actually they cannot use due to regulations. And our regulations are more onerous than country like Singapore also. So Singapore has even country like Singapore has lesser this thing. So you see, it's these small things that truly matter to the entrepreneur. Labor laws, inspection. So these are the changes which haven't happened, and there is still some red tape, there is still some discretion. But at a very senior level, when you have to, let's say when you have to interact with Ministry of Corporate Affairs or anything, there because everything is very digital, there is no discretion, or there is no, it's not that you have to pay money or something like that. But when you come at a state level, local level, that's when there are some problems. There are still some challenges rather in terms of red tapeism, labor laws, land laws. Of course, GST is still very much a work in progress. So I think that is where a lot of changes have happened. When we see India, it's not just central government. We also have to consider central government, state government, and local government. In India, local government is the weakest link actually, unfortunately. In China, it is 88% of the national expenditure by government happens at the local, is combined at the local level. In India, local governments are the weakest, and that is where we have to improve. We have to improve ease of doing business in India. It's not just the central level. So we say that Modi, but it is actually at the city level that we need to improve. At Mumbai level, Pune level. So that is not happening. That's the unfortunate part. So when that also happens, then everything is synced. Because our cities are so, they are practically hand to mouth. Maybe even worse than that. You see the condition of roads in India, they're like, it's really bad. Even in Pune, the situation is not that much better. So it's like basically, so that's where cities are not competing. That's where it's not flowing. And just like we have talked about competition between companies, right? We have talked about that companies free market. In India, state to some extent there is competition between state governments for attracting investment, but we don't have competition between city governments. When that will happen, that's when the actual reforms will happen. In China, all city governments compete with each other to attract investments. In India, that is not happening. They are practically not able to fix the roads, forget about attracting investments. So So that's the problem. So when that happens, when governments will compete with each other, a lot of things will actually be taken care of. Yeah, so that division is there. I mean, at the central level to some extent has been reduced. The state and local level, it is still very much work in progress.
I won't talk much about red tape, right? It's a relative term. Some people may have gone through bad experiences. It's all about experiences that you share. So I won't, I respect every view. Gurcharan Das sir said about manufacturing. We are lacking in manufacturing. Why? Because innovation was lacking, right? So 2015, 16, Startup India happened. That policy had changed the entire game plan. It is focused on innovation. And when you talk about innovation, a lot of things have been streamlined for startup who want to, come out with their new ideas and build a business out of it. If you look at Startup India, it's not just about policy, it's about making the conducive environment for the new innovator to work on. Like, government has come out with innovation policy right from the educational institution level. So it's a holistic approach we have to take and look at how the policy is working. We have at educational institutions level, innovation councils are there. We have incubators which are funded by government. We have schemes funded by government for the startups. We have all the ecosystem now developed for the innovative ideas to prosper in this country. So I look at it in a broader way. Lot many things need to be done on the infrastructure domain. Things are happening at pace. Naturally, it will take time to do these reforms on the land acquisition, road, health. These are the basics, of course. But then innovation, promoting innovation and handholding them, giving them the softs that are required, will eventually drive the manufacturing in this country. Because unless you innovate a product, you cannot manufacture. So far, IT revolution has taken, but I feel that it was like, to be very frank, for me it is like body shopping. Like, I don't call it a product. Our talent was exported, and I think Trump is doing good to us that now by default the talent will remain here, and they will have no other option but to work in the country, which they should have done actually. In fact, I had got an opportunity from Purdue University to go there, but I chose not to, and I am happy today that I am here, not in US. Right? So people should realize that opportunity is in India, not in US. So good that Trump is putting this, barriers for Indians to go there. It will benefit India in hindsight. Thank you.
Tushar informs me that we need to take a break from this panel, right?
Yep, next speaker will be joining at 3.
So let's take a break from this panel and we'll resume in 15-20 minutes when the speaker is done.
Yes,
Yeah, that's okay because I think people will have some questions from the panel.
yes, yes.
Okay.
We'll have a dedicated question hour, then
Yeah,
all the
so
questions will
we'll
be
just
answered.
take a break now and let the online speaker do this thing because we have a link generator.
But we can continue till the time he joins.
Well, when the macro panelists were talking, I thought about your localization initiatives. You keep talking about localizing stuff and having the city governments have the power. And all I could think about was having an auto bill for libertarianism. What do you think about that from the audience? Anyone? Auto bill for libertarians? Do you know what is auto bill? Yes, it is. Which is why it would be fun to have it.
I wrote my graduate thesis on that.
Sorry?
I wrote my graduate thesis on
Auto bill.
for libertarians.
Oh, the auto bill for libertarians. Could you please talk more about that? We'll just wait for the panelists to join.
So charter cities in general, and I think Ajay touched upon it, that spatial economic zones basically are not the best. But the reason spatial economic zones have not worked for India is simply
Guys, please let him speak.
is simply this, right? That if the government determines where the special economic zone would be, what it would produce, who would get to, basically open a shop there, then it's not going to work, because then it's basically not the market that is determining it, but the politics of it. So I basically, charter cities is not really an original idea. It's basically, you could say that Hong Kong is a charter city in some way, and in limited way, DIFC in Dubai is a charter city example. But it came back when Paul Romer, who is Nobel laureate in economics, he talked about it in 2008. So I basically wrote, I think that one of the countries that would really would benefit a lot from charter cities is India. The reason behind that is very simple. That any policy intervention that is risky is very difficult to do in such a big country. But when you have like a sandbox, a small city where you can bring it in and then see if it works or not. And if it works, you basically apply it to the whole country. And it has worked in China, because Shenzhen essentially was this. So I wrote my thesis on a minimum viable charter city in India and how to get to it. Basically, from the legal standpoint, what are the laws that you can use, and whose buy-in you would need. So do you need central government's buy-in, local government's buy-in, state government's buy-in, and what's the easiest way to get to that? So that's basically.
I would be very curious and interested to read that thesis, because you would have to deal with the DM, the separate regulations, etc.
Absolutely. So it's a mix of like infrastructure project management, as well as a lot of economics and law. I think IIT Madras could have published it somewhere. I don't know, to find like a public link, but otherwise you can always.
After it's the innovative IIT Madras, because they would write such a thesis. I cannot even imagine it at JNU at the moment. But I can hear you.
Alright, so if you just wait for Mr. Mitra to come.
Just give me a heads up.
Yep.
Alright, to our next theme. Now the government, banks, NBFCs, angel investors say they've all come up with separate credit models, but startups and businesses often hit a wall. It seems that raising funding is extremely difficult. What new finance models or guarantees could open new credit doors for the entrepreneurs? We'll listen to Mr. Zaveri and then
So I'm in the Indian investor. I'm invested about 12 to 13 startups, now I think 13 now. And also Kiani Ventures stuff is an angel investor community syndicate, so we invest in startups. So by its very logic, equity funding by its very nature is supposed to be tough for startups. Okay? So even in a developed country like US, it's not that every startup will get funding. Only maybe out of 100, 2 startups get equity funding. So that even in US, of course, the amount of funding is available is more. Having said that, angel investing in India to some extent has picked up. Of course, we are not in the league of developed countries. So if it's just in last 10 years, if we are comparing, then investment in startups definitely has picked up. We have now more VC firms, family offices. Yesterday I was in a family office summit, more VC firms. I interact with VC firms, family offices a lot. And you do have now a lot more capital for startups than perhaps it was 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago we didn't even, the word startup itself, actually people didn't know what it is, frankly speaking. It was only business rather than that, because now of course startups have a different business. So in that way funding has definitely increased for startups now. But having said that, we are still not in the league of developed countries. We still have a long way to go. Like deep tech is one sector where funding is not, we don't have patient capital in India. And one of the reasons is that we don't have institutional capital like pension funds, insurance funds. We don't have that kind of long-term institutional capital which can support VC funds or angel investors. In India also we do angel investments, and everybody asks me the same question. Okay, before even investment, that people ask me, "Is the exit of milega? Can I exit in 6 months, 1 year?" So I have to tell them that it requires at least 2, 3, 4 years before you can get a good exit. So so that's how it is. But nevertheless, equity investment is definitely picking up in India. We still require a strong LP base, limited partner base in that one. As far as banks and NBFCs, debt funding is there. Banks of course are there, NBFCs are there. One more structure that is picked up, and I think a lot of investors do not know, but it is revenue-based financing. That is a hybrid of equity and debt. So I think that is a very good model. In fact, I am helping one or two startups to get revenue-based financing. That is based. That is of course not for very idea early stage. You need to have some predictable revenue, and then it helps you to certain percentage of revenue you have to share with the financer. So that is neither you don't require collateral, nor do you have to dilute your equity. I think that's a very good source of revenue. And the idea that every startup should get equity funding is not true. Very few startups will get actually equity funding. That is a fact. Whether it is India, US, UK, any other country. Of course, the quantum of funding should be overall increased, but the percentage of startup investment that will go into startups will always be around out of 100, maximum 2, 3, 5% will get equity funding. Because equity funding by its very nature is not for all startups. It is not for your local, that I want to open a tea stall, 100 tea stalls in Mumbai, give me equity funding. Somebody maybe of your friend's family might give. But when we talk of angel investors, VC funds, micro VC funds, family offices, they're looking for startups which can scale very fast in next 3, 4, 5 years. So not by its very nature, not every startup can fulfill that criteria. So that's why it's not there. But having said that, we can definitely have revenue-based financing. We can have grants. I think grants, there are a lot more grants now available for, especially at MVP stage, commercialization, initial marketing, business development stage. So that kind of thing is there. But unless until you develop a very large limited partner base, like in US there are pension funds who invest, university endowments who invest, and they are like huge risk capital. India doesn't have that kind of a risk capital. So that way we still have a long way to go, but we have made some progress definitely. Especially like with family offices being very prominent investors now in startups directly. So yeah, to some extent it is changing, but of course it will take, US has taken 30-40 years to reach that stage, so we will also take some time. But it can be accelerated. We don't have 30-40 years to capitalize on the deep tech opportunity that US and China are like at least 10-20 years ahead of us in a way. So we have to do it in next 5 years. What they did in 20 years, we have to do it in 5 years. And we can do that provided we liberalize the capital. Like in India, pension funds cannot invest in VC funds. We do have SIDBI fund of funds. The 10,000 is like 10,000 fund of funds, which is good. But it's a very small amount. We don't have university endowments. Charitable trusts are not allowed to invest in VC funds, PE funds. That is another restriction. I can tell you a temple like Tirupati Balaji, I don't know how many of you have been there. That has billions of dollars. Even if 10-15% of that corpus is transferred to VC funds, trust me, there will be a lot of money for next 3-4 years. So yeah, there are several temples like even if they can transfer 10-15%, a lot of money can be. Startups will have far more potential for revenue sources. So that's what it is.
Yeah, the temple idea is very good. Innovative in a sense. So, I think the good news is there is a lot of money available. But the bad news is there are no good ideas in the market. Everybody thinks that they are startup. They come with an idea and they want funding. It doesn't happen that way. So, we have to be little practical when we expect funding. At the same time, he mentioned more about equity and other funding. I will dwell upon the government sponsored grants, to be frankly, because Startup India, under that we have Nidhi, which is a big initiative of government, under which you get Nidhi Prayas, a grant of 10 lakh to 20 lakhs for your idea to product development. That is your Prayas. So anybody who is getting incubated in a incubator can apply for the grant, and of course there is selection amongst all the ideas. Of course, you have to compete with other ideas. You can't expect every idea will be funded by that mean also. Then there is Nidhi seed fund, which is for scaling up of the business. So when you get a product, you can then scale it up, go to market, check, validate your product. You get up to 50 lakhs. For technology driven innovations, you get up to 1 crore from government, and these are grants. You are not expected to pay back. So I think any startup or a small business owner who cannot utilize 1 crore given as a grant, if he cannot utilize it properly and build his business, he is not to be fit to be a startup or a businessman. So I think there are opportunities available. Only thing, you have to come out with great ideas. Believe me, we are having dearth of ideas. We don't have good ideas, enough ideas to be funded. People are waiting for funding. 10 years back, I was sitting, I sit on the panels. We used to sit with checkbook in our hand 10 years back, because we were also learning as investors. We used to invest looking at the pitch deck then, but we learnt over a period that there is some kind of exit involved. You have to look at return on investment. So it's my money. When I put it in any idea, I have to get exit also, or returns probably 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. When it did not happen, the investors learned hard way that you cannot just go on signing the check. So now due diligence happens really in a good way. Your idea has to be good enough, and if your idea is good enough, there are people who will line up in front of you to sign up and fund you. It's that way in India.
Okay, so shall we take a break now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we will take a break and come back to this panel. We can just keep sitting here. There is a phone. Over to Mr. Mitra. Is he listening? Do you need me to call it out again? Mr. Mitra, over to you.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yep.
All right.
So, I want to get into basically all this sort of negativization of business and making money that's happened today. One city that reminded me of my childhood the most. Any guesses? Audience? Any guess? I grew up in Delhi in the 80s. Do you know the one city that reminded me the most of Delhi in the 80s? Guess. Wild guess.
Can you unmute us?
Well, it was Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea. And you know why? Because they were like, yeah, really. Because they were like, I used to live in Bharti Nagar opposite Khan Market. Today, Khan Market gang is a very popular term because it's a high disposable income market, you see. In those days, it was full of puncture shops. There was one, the front market was cycle repair. The back market was also motorcycle repair. In those days, there were no cars, almost no cars. And there was one notebook shop out there where we used to get our school notebooks from. The Koreans are very honest. They say it is orange flavored sugar water. We used to call it Gold Spot. I don't know if you remember Gold Spot and Campa Cola. They were good. They were very good. But it was all import substitute. If you wanted to get a phone in your house, you had to wait for a whole year. We were staying in those Babu D1 flats in Bharti Nagar, and we had to wait for a whole year to get a phone. When we got a TV, it was such a big thing. And TVs had been very common in America since the 60s. Now, that was what India used to be like in those days. I think people have forgotten that. Anyway, since then you had the 1991 reforms and a lot of things changed. But what we don't seem to realize in this country is hard reforms, painful reforms, they're a process. They are not a point in time which you say the 91 reforms, the Vajpayee reforms. You can't have reforms every 10 years because every reform leads to a set of opportunities, but it also leads to a new set of challenges. And that is something we do not seem to get in India, because effectively we've gone back to a sort of, not a license Raj, but a Babu Raj in that sense. Now, what is our biggest problem right now? Is that we are still not industrialized. In spite of all the reforms, sir before me was speaking, before me was talking about startups not getting funding. Most of these startups are fly-by-nights. I know, startups, say in the automotive sector, whose entire game is to live off the Make in India component. And the foreign companies also invest in companies which they know are going to fail. And this has become something of a little, industry by itself. Do you have anybody in government who's actually able to vet a startup and say this is legit, this is not, do an audit and things like that? No, not happening out here. I mean, it's best the government doesn't do it, but do the banks have that capability? I doubt that very much, because a lot of these people, which are fly-by-night operators, are simply getting loans left, right, and center. Now, we also need to remember, industrialization is a highly disruptive and brutal process. Now, you can say, oh, well, Stalin killed so many people in Ukraine because of industrialization. Churchill killed a lot of people in Bengal because of the forced wartime industrialization of Bengal. But in the 1700s, Britain lost a quarter of its population to industrialization. 1/4 of the population died because of industrialization. That was totally free, laissez-faire. And the problem was that the so-called robber barons, you're always told the Magna Carta was a charter of freedom. It was not. It was actually a charter of slavery, where individual actors could easily prey upon civil liberties. Now, when you start industrialization, if you start industrialization, it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. Maybe it'll happen in some of your lifetimes. But I've got another 40 years to live, and I can very confidently say India is not going to industrialize. You need a strong state. The problem with a strong state is, in India, it becomes a police state. You look at the powers that the police has. If you're industrializing and adding to state capacity, that same police that is doing hafta vasuli, enabled by all kinds of new methods and resources, will turn completely rapine on you. But notice, nobody is asking the questions about police reform. You hear about police brutality every single day. Is anybody talking about police reform? Everybody talks about the ED going berserk. Is anybody holding the ED to account? What if these cases fail? What are you going to do then? There is not a single market in India today that is not distorted. The worst is the education sector, completely artificial supply. Every part of the supply chain, there is some politician. Do you know a school which is not owned by a politician? The second is the building sector, roti, kapda, makan. So let's also add Vidya to that. Vidya, completely distorted market. You have your building sector. Your building sector is today probably the most corrupt. And it is done so by all this, regulation of land. This is agricultural land, this is industrial land. Urban rules which basically help the builder do whatever they want. And then you have food. You go to a place like, say, Bangkok. Now, Thailand has a much higher per capita income than India. And yet you find the basics. Forget the basics, even the luxuries, lobster, crab, things like that are much cheaper. If you're looking at inflation today, how many of you, honestly, audience, put up your hands if you eat jowar and bajra every day? I can understand in winter you have bajre ki roti, but do any of you have jowar and bajra every day? Jowar and bajra in your inflation index. The actual stuff that you eat is probably, you're facing an inflation of about 10 to 12%. Much higher than what the official inflation figures are. Now, all of this, the problem now is nobody is actually asking the real questions of systemic reforms that need to come. Police reforms, the freedom of the food markets. No, you want more subsidies, you want all kinds of artificial controls out there. That is what the farmers' protest is, what is so-called farmers' protest, is in fact the landowners' protest of Punjab, which is the most distorted and controlled food market in India, right? So we need to start asking the right questions. Sorry, I've taken up more than my fair share of time. And till you do not get there, you are going to continue having all kinds of problems. You are not going to progress. And in this country, remember, corruption is never direct. It is almost never direct. Maybe the average useless local commissioner or whatever will take 5 lakhs from you for doing something. But here, corruption masquerades around as errors of omission. Under British law, you have errors of omission and you have crimes of commission. An error of omission cannot be punished. So there's literally nothing you can get done. And I would actually say that the Indian state per year, through errors of omission, ends up killing more people than Winston Churchill did in the Bengal famine. You look at TB today, the TB figures aren't out. You lose 400,000 people to TB every year. Look at the road accident figures, things that can be easily fixed. Are you even looking at shifting trucks from the right lane? They always keep idling on the right lane. No. Do you punish people who, when road violations happen, are people punished? No. So there are very, very serious problems. We need to start taking this very seriously. I don't think the new generation understands how bad we were and how far we've come, but we have so much further to go. Thank you. Sorry, I've taken up more than my fair share.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. That was a wonderful speech. We thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot from you. There are a couple of questions here from you, and we'll be very happy if you can speak on.
Sorry, could you speak up a bit? Could you hold the mic a bit closer? I can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, somewhat better. Yeah.
Right. So we were wondering if you could speak on the Soviet infiltration, the ideological infiltration that occurred before 1991.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this was a deal. I don't think people realize this, but Nehru, in spite of all his socialist tendencies, was very happy to sack the first application of the dismissal of a government. Article 356, I think it's Article 356, was used against the communist government in Kerala, EMS Namboodiripat's government. And he had no problems beating up communists and throwing them in jail. At the same time, taking the country more and more leftist. Any time a private industry showed profit, he would nationalize it, take over the profits, because none of his other ventures were making any profit. And that is where you have the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1957, I think, which was one of the most disastrous industrial policy resolutions we've had. Now, Indira Gandhi was a much smarter operator. She used to keep going after the communists, but she literally gave the keys of education to the communists. So you had a whole bunch of people that were appointed Minister of Education under her tenure, where the keys were given over to communists. Now, why is it that a lot of academics love communism and Marxist ideology so much? Well, as libertarians, we know life is very ad hoc. It's very irregular. There is no patterns to it. In economics, you have this rule, ceteris paribus, and man is rational. Once you go past that, ceteris paribus never works, and man is absolutely not rational. But what Marxist history, Marxist economics does is it creates models of everything. And academics love predictability. They love having a model from which you can pick and choose instead of dealing with the messiness of life. And so you have a whole load of academics, usually the substandard ones, that go towards this whole Marxist paradigm. And this was let in lock, stock and barrel. Now understand, every one of your universities was essentially turned into a leftist breeding ground. And this was heavily funded by the USSR. This was the actual deal made between Indira Gandhi and the USSR. In return, she got a lot as well. But was it good for the country? No. And you had Dhar, who was her secretary, who came up with the idea of a committed bureaucracy, which is they had to be committed to the manifesto of the Congress party. Even to this day, Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute in Mussoorie will teach you to be committed. Well, they don't openly say the Congress party, but it's not very indistinguishable from the Congress party. Congress party's line. So you had this infiltration of Soviet ideas, the compromise of a lot of our officials by the Soviets directly, There were newspapers. I'm not going to name newspapers because I have no intention of fighting one more defamation case other than the 100 that I'm talking about right now. But there were these newspapers which we know the Soviet embassy was paying them for 100,000 copies per month. They would not be delivered. Only 50 copies would be delivered to the embassy, but you knew exactly how it was. It was legal. It exploited a legal loophole, and that is how the funding was done. So where do you get away from all of this? JNU today, you look at the kind of indoctrination that happens in the name of education. This is where your future diplomats are going to come from. How do you get away from it? See, the left always works systemically. They work across the board. Their ultimate goal is power. They understand power. They know how to capture power. The right is very individualistic. We don't, we in fact want to dismantle the instruments of power. And this is the mismatch that you all have to deal with, essentially.
Are you guys up? Would you like to add to that, or is that it?
Just one other thing. When we say, because you very specifically brought up the USSR, think of communism as the Atma. I don't know how many of you watch Hindi horror movies, because they're all about Atmas shifting soul from one body to another. The USSR was merely the body. The spirit of it was the communism, which today has shifted lock, stock and barrel, surprise, surprise, to America. You look at the kind of wokery and the left wing. Since when did America start talking about healthcare? People don't understand the socialization of health costs like that is going to destroy individual choice. The reason you had vaccine mandates, your personal choice to do what you want with the body. It was the same libertarians the Democrats in America who support personal choice for abortion, who were then saying you have no choice with the vaccine. Choice with abortion, no choice with the vaccine. Why? Because it is the economics or the socialization of health costs that matters now. So you have America going down a very, very dark path. Their today their debt is 130% of their GDP. It is unpayable. Sure, you can work your way out of it through inflation, but for all effects and purposes, it is unpayable. So understand, the USSR is an idea. It has mutated. Today, USA is the new USSR. Remember that. Don't think the USSR is dead.
Thank you very much, sir. That was an amazing session. Being from JNU, I'm a graduate of JNU. I'm a little bit partial, and I hope that you're amenable to reform. It's got a lot of ideologies in JNU. Yeah, communism still dominates, but we're reforming. We're working towards libertarianism. I'm here. I'm sure more people will join in. Thank you for that wonderful speech, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Wasn't that an amazing session, guys? Alright, so before Mr. Mitra joined today, we were talking about funding and we were talking about how startups are not able to access funds, but it's also because startups are not coming up with good ideas. Now on that, I actually wrote down about a personal anecdote here. Me, my partner Amita sitting over there, and another guy, Mooch Chakrago, winners of Toycathon 2021, organized by the Government of India. We designed 2 games, we won that competition, and the funding never came. We were promised funding, but it never came. So there's problems on both sides, I think. Working fine? So the problem, I suppose, lies on both sides a little bit. We were meritocratic winners of that competition, and we still had to go pillar to post to get funding, but we never really got it. And then the idea died down because people have to make money. We have to go about our business and do our jobs. So I suppose if there's a problem in innovation, and I will acknowledge that 100% is a problem, there's also a problem on the other side. Shall we move on to the other, and then you can probably respond to what I just said. Okay. So, yeah, this was a point that Mr. Ajay was also raising in his address. where can a balance be struck between deregulation and consumer and investor protections? Because companies want legal certainty, but we also need to ensure that the interests of the consumer and investors are not harmed in terms of deregulation.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. So, if you have studied classical economics, it is said government intervention is required only when the market fails, and one of them is like consumer protection, right? When the market fails, when there is information asymmetry or something like that. So we definitely need to deregulate. There is no doubt about it. The industry is all these futile rules, regulations, which unnecessarily. TeamLease has done an excellent job in there are some 67,000 regulations or something that even a small and MSME enterprises have to comply with. In fact, one of the reasons why India has this missing middle problem, I don't know if you understand missing middle problem. Missing middle means that India doesn't have too many medium enterprises. We have very small micro enterprises, 99.9, almost 99.5 are like small and micro enterprises which are not scalable, which don't want to grow. And then we have very large conglomerates like Tata, Birla, Ambani, Adani, and of course we all know who are the big ones. But in middle we don't have a middle. We have a missing middle, especially in manufacturing. And that is why the jobs, we have a job crisis, because the middle world over, even in US, 50% of the new jobs are coming from medium enterprises, not from the very large corporations. In fact, when a company like Microsoft is actually laying off people, Microsoft, Alphabet, so we don't have a missing middle because of these costs of regulation, costs of complying with the regulations and all. And that is, we definitely need to deregulate there. And coming back to consumer protection, there are ways and means that we can protect consumers. One of the unique ways to protect consumers in US especially is tort laws. I learned about tort laws in one of the sessions that I attended a few years ago. The Center for Civil Society Parth, and they run. So if they are there, Parth and all person. That's when I learned, and that's when I learned this concept of tort laws. Tort laws, how they work is that you don't have it's not like you'll be sent to jail or something like that. But if suppose if the consumer is harmed by your actions or inactions, then the company is supposed to pay a financial liability. There is a financial cost to it, and of course the reputation of the company gets damaged. That's altogether different one. And that is the reason why these tort laws are there. It's not just a financial cost, it is also the reputation of the company gets impacted. That's why that is one of the good ways of protecting the consumers, tort laws. And one more way of protecting consumers or workers, especially workers also, is insurance, especially environmental insurance and all. So instead of inspectors coming and saying that okay, is this environmentally compliant or this and all those things, then they will charge maybe bribes or something. In Singapore you have an insurance policy which rates the factories and all based on their compliance, how much compliance and all those things, and then companies have to pay the premium based on that. So the less compliant they have to pay higher premium. So that is also another way of protecting. Tort laws is one way of protecting consumers, and insurance policy premium can increase. That's another way of protecting the workers as well. So you deregulate, but you also ensure that consumers are protected via laws, civil laws, not necessarily criminal laws, which can be, which can get on very fast and which can be resolved very fast rather than criminal law. Because of course in India we know that how criminal justice system works. So the idea is to have civil laws for consumer protection rather than trying to ensure that okay, if we do this, then we'll we have the executive for 2 years, 1 year, and that is not going to work. Otherwise, jails are already full of 75% under trials, so it's not going to work.
I won't talk much about law because I'm not a lawyer. So probably I will talk about deregulation in a perspective where we are talking about global village, right? So we are not a country anymore. When we talk today, the product is launched, it is consumable all across the globe. the social media, internet boom has enabled us to launch the product at a given time all across the globe. So that, and when it comes to regulation, it's always give and take. And that's why the free trade agreements are signed, and we recently, yesterday signed with UK, and we are in process of signing with lot many countries. I think Singapore is the benchmark for that because it is having free trade agreement with almost all the countries in the world. So that's why most of the Indian companies also have their offices in Singapore when they have to do business with global. So regulation is a give and take. At the same time, I think every country has its own right to protect its own local industry. So when you need to protect your local industry, you have to be sometimes put those barriers on the competitors, right? It doesn't mean that we as a consumer should accept any below the quality product, right? When earlier 1991, when it was privatized and globalized, there was a question of Indian companies managing the quality of the product. We were not ready in that term. So if suddenly competitors come in, the problem was Indian industry was not ready to take that competitive challenge because of the quality aspect. But today, quality is given. If you want to be in the market, you have to be a quality product, whether it is Make in India or whether it is from the MNC that is competing with any Make in India product. So I think deregulation to an extent is required. Free market, I think there should be a balance between completely free market and completely regulated scenario. That's what is my take.
Okay, I think I'm just going to speak to the policy perspective of this. Based upon two examples, the recent Air India crash tragedy in Ahmedabad, there has to be a balance. Someone has to be held accountable for that. And yet the investigation has blamed the parents. Now that's about consumer protection of consumer lives there. Lives were at stake. And second is a very interesting case study which was featured in the UPSC mains ethics exam, perhaps in 2022 or 2018, about substandard shoes. So the person writing the exam was supposed to assume that they were the joint secretary. This was a very big company coming to India, investing in India, but they found out that the shoes were going to be substandard. What would the joint secretary do about it? I'm not sure if he should be doing anything about it. There should be a quality check. If it's not found good enough, kick them out of the market. It's as simple as that, no matter how big they are. So I suppose this is where the balance kind of lies. The state acting as a proper night watchman who you can trust and not just be afraid of. So this is it, and we'll move on to the next and the final theme. After that, we go to the audience question and answer session. So reforms happen with the big firms end up gaining more. Ajay sir also mentioned that in the beginning, that big firms gain a lot and smaller firms are left behind. What do we do such that policies provide their fair share to the smaller firms as well?
You want to go first? Well, I already talked about the missing middle part, right? So in India, in fact, small companies they have an incentive to stay small because they don't want to comply with the regulation cost. At the cost of complying with regulations, so they have an incentive to not get registered with GST and all. In fact, recently I was just reading an article in Indian today morning. So there was this GST raid on this chaiwala, someone vada pav wala or someone in basically a stall, I don't remember, in Mumbai only. They were like doing 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs monthly revenue. Monthly revenue, not annual revenue. That is more than some of the startups in this country make, must be.
Yeah. And listed startups. Unfortunately.
Definitely much more than some of the startups that I know evaluate on a daily basis. I mean, it's much more. I mean, refund started at a much lower level. But yeah, I mean, on a serious note, so basically it was not registered with GST and all those things, and it got some GST income tax raid or GST raid and all. So that is what basically the idea is that in India, small wants to remain small. At least they want to project themselves to be small. They want to remain small, unorganized, small. So one is the cost of compliance. That why small wants to remain small. Second is the one is like for all the banks, and I'm not talking of startups. Okay, I'm not talking of tech-based startups. They have funding, equity, VC funding, all those family offices and all this. But normal businesses, right? Normal businesses that most of us would be like I'm talking of traditional, non-tech, non-VC fundable businesses. Okay, so there is a genuine lack of credit. Banks, NBFCs and all, because small banks, small industries cannot give collateral and all those things. So if you have to ensure that, and third part, if you have to ensure that small businesses also grow up, we have to ensure that they can become big in export markets. And that is where I think this government has made a mistake by implementing all these, introducing high tariff barriers and introducing this QC or quality control orders and all, which is giving protection to the big players, but not to the smaller players. I'll just give you an example. In India, polyester staple fiber, right, which is Reliance is one of the most prominent manufacturers of PSF, polyester staple fiber. So that is used to make, and these are like this is all documented. I can give the links of all this it is there. So in India, Reliance cost of all these things is actually 20% higher than what competitors in Bangladesh or Vietnam garment manufacturers get. Because of the high tariff. In India, garment manufacturers cannot access these intermediate products because the tariff is very high. So Reliance can charge more on these products, which makes the downstream industry uncompetitive. Or it becomes like in the exports market. In the export market, because of these things, now if there is an import duty on steel, again there is a cascading effect on the downstream industries. So essentially, if you really want to scale up small businesses and all, and at least you want them to scale up to medium businesses and all, then we have to fix three things. First is the cost of compliance has to come down drastically for it. Second is the cost of credit and the availability of credit. And third is this, we have to do away with this import tariff duties and all these on intermediate goods, raw goods, and these quality control orders, which actually stops them from getting these inputs at a very competitive cost. So I think if these three things are done, we are protecting the big boys. Like Reliance doesn't need actually any protection. 5-10 billion dollar कम हो जाएगा अंबानी के घर में तो उसका घर वही रहेगा. Yesterday I was passing through Kolhapur and I saw that body buildings and all those things. So it is not going to make any material, but it will make a material difference to a lot of other people who use their products. So it's very important that we actually reduce import duties. We should ideally eliminate tariffs. But if we can't do that, we should at least reduce to so that at least the manufacturers, small manufacturers, have access to these raw materials and intermediate goods from the international market rather than just relying on domestic sources. And secondly, of course, credit and the cost of compliance of regulation. I think if we can fix these three things, I am sure a lot of small businesses have the potential to scale up in this country.
My take on this is like, according to me, most of the small business owners or the startups are themselves not aware of lot many things that are going around. They are not aware, they don't know about many schemes that are being offered by the government or by any banking sector, or today the advantage is everything has gone online. If you visit Startup India site, DPIIT site, you visit SIDBI site, you visit MSME site, all the information is available step by step. Everything is spoon fed. It's only thing that you should open those sites and go to, whatever queries you have, you can get the answer over there. Of course, then execution is where all these challenges happen. But the main part is they are not aware of what all is available, right? Very few people know that these grants are available. They struggle, they have an idea, they start chasing VCs. With an idea, you can't chase VC. Fundraising is an activity in itself. To raise funds, it takes quite a few months to do that. If you focus on that, and for a new founder, I think he should focus on building his business rather than chasing VCs. If he is strong with his idea, he should focus on how he should build the business, get few customers on board, and I think getting customers is the best way of funding your business. Very few people really understand this basic about business. Get customers, you don't require funding. I always quote Zoho. Today Zoho is $1 billion startup without any equity diluted. Why others can't follow that model? Why we want, every time I see so many startups approach me, they say, I have an idea, I can't do this because I don't have funds. That's not it. Then Zoho wouldn't have happened. He's sitting in that farm of his with his lungi on, right? In his traditional, he's enjoying his life, right? And he is $1 billion worth, founder without giving any equity. So that's if you can, benchmark him, I think it is possible for every small, businessman to prosper in India. Everybody is following those listed, startups. Most of them are not making profits, unfortunately, right? And today in India, valuation is taking more precedence to value creation. If any business owner focuses on value creation, I think valuation will be taken care of. If you, chase valuation, then you are not going to, you are going to struggle at given point, because you cannot, you cannot work backward. Only in exams you can do that, right? In real life exam, you can't do that. You have to really perform to create value and then create the right kind of valuation. So I think we have to also understand that we have created a bubble called startup, right? We are keeping few of the wrong startups as our role model. Instead, there are quite a few like Zoho who have really done well. I think we should follow their model and grow. And coming to yours, of course, your question, I think you should use your internet, judiciously, rather than being on social media and doing reels and being influencer, right? Every other individual today calls him or her an influencer. Rather than doing that, do these things. I think life will be much more easier. Thank you.
Agreed, sir.
No, that is some. Sorry.
That was wonderful, sir. Thoroughly enjoyable. All right, we're opening up the Q&A session now, but please remember brevity is a skill much appreciated in life. So keep the questions short, please. Go ahead.
So just on both of these points, one, venture, obviously venture capital is not for everybody, and bootstrap businesses, fine, I mean they're, people build, but the whole point of venture is when speed is of utmost importance, right? And sometimes, I'm saying this as a venture-backed founder because I don't think it would have been possible for us to do it bootstrap. The question I was going to ask on this is that the government grants, I mean, my position is very clear. What we are doing, we could have perhaps gotten government grants, but I think government should close down all the grant programs. Absolutely, and I think that is founders should not really be focusing the time on getting, venture capital. I think the time spent on getting venture capital, there is still a feedback loop. But the time I see a lot of talented young folks spent filling out forms and absolutely like appearing in front of panels where the bureaucrats obviously don't understand ABCD about their business, and they will be making these decisions. That's the that's the most soul-sucking thing that you could do. So I think, I mean, my humble opinion is that all of these programs should be closed. On infant industry protection, I just wanted to say this. I don't think there is the argument has a slippery slope. When you make an infant industry argument that these industries need to be protected, believe me, those protections would never go away. And when you lift it, and I'll just give one example, Bajaj was one of the companies that really opposed LPG reforms, not liberalization and privatization, but globalization. They vehemently opposed because, and the argument was the same, that hey, we are not ready to compete. If you open it up, we would be washed away. And they, from there, today as we stand in 2025, Bajaj had to compete because the reforms went anyway. Bajaj today is one of the top 5 manufacturers of two-wheelers anywhere in the world, and three-wheelers as well. So I think companies would learn to compete. Infant industry production is a slippery slope that if you allow a particular industry, and polyester, I mean that is a classic, that's a great example, because all the industries downstream today are suffering because of it. All Indian textile manufacturers who are basically doing finished clothes, they're just uncompetitive today. Basically all of that has been shut off. So number of jobs lost is insane.
What's the question? What's the statement?
You just wanted to make a comment, right?
So basically on government grants versus equity, I mean,
Okay.
I think there was one.
I have some.
Oh, sure. So we just short on time.
Yeah. See, government grants, one thing is that grant is not decided by any babus or something. Okay. The panelists are from the industry, right? And each and every application is sorted by the industry expert. I am on the expert panel. IIT is the IIT Bombay and all other IITs are the center of excellences. And IITs are mainly involved in these, selection of grants. And I am on the panel. So, like me, there are many industry specialists who are on the panel, and we are supposed to evaluate each and every proposal that comes in, as if it is going to stand sustainable in the market, and then only we, evaluate and shortlist somebody who gets the grant. So it's not somebody who is doing babu. And secondly, in the government today, the main innovation initiatives are driven not by IPS officers anymore. They are driven, all the CEOs are, if you look at the CEOs, all CEOs are coming from corporates. So all the initiatives, all major innovation driven initiatives, if you talk about Atal Innovation Mission, it is headed by a corporate person, right? Their team is driven from the corporate. So people today are leaving their jobs from the corporate and joining government to drive the innovation, initiative. You talk about in Maharashtra, you have Skill University today. It is driven by all the corporate guys today. No more IPS people are driving it. So gone are the days when IPS people who didn't know technology are driving it. Today, people who know the industry, they drive the innovation initiative in India. And be rest assured that, of course, after getting the funds, how you utilize the funds is very important. Many of the times startups don't utilize the fund properly. In that sense, government has now also learned, and now the due diligence is much more stricter. Earlier, the grants were given just like that. Now there are quite a few ifs and buts before you give the grants.
Guys, sorry,
Not an
I'm
expert on
really
grants, so
sorry.
I'll not say
There are other panelists who've been waiting for a very long time.
Is there a cap on the number of grants awarded to?
Not exactly. Not exactly.
I think we can do this after
Not
this
exactly.
now, okay? We will.
We have a last session where
Yeah.
all the questions will be answered.
Okay, so we just move on to the next panel. Thank you very much everyone for listening.
Whoever wants to copy either tea or coffee, raise your hand. For tea, raise your hand. Tea or coffee? Tea. Yes, third one is for tea. Tea. William. And coffee? Somewhere else.
Very, very unique.
What's your view?
I want socialism.
You already shared it?
I've shared it. Yeah, I've shared it on the. You know, we'll do it in between.
Hmm?
We'll do it in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pin this. Pin this one. Pin.
What is it? Oh, okay. Which one? Where have you sent it yet? This one, huh? You want to play it now?
No, not now.
This one?
Can we? In between, we'll have it. So the audio will go to the live stream. You just speak a bit louder. Where the speaker is going to.
Yeah, you have to keep the mic straight and talk into it.
But whatever plays there, that will be audible on the screen.
Okay, so this has to be held by all the speakers.
Yes, the speaker has.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So, good to see so many liberty lovers all together.
No. It's on. It's on. This is only for the streaming mic. You guys have to talk loud.
Do I speak here?
No. You have to just be loud.
Okay. So yeah, guys. Basically, I'm the host for the panel. I'm Pradyot, and this is the Web3 and Freedom Tech panel. On my leftmost, we have Ajay, whom you all may know. So Ajay is a long-time libertarian. He's also, interestingly, he's also one of the chief evangelizers and early participants in a project called Monte Libero. So Monte Libero Free City project. He's a part of that, and so that is why I asked him to come on this channel. So in the center we have Harsh, who's a open source developer, and he basically focuses on Bitcoin and Linux. So yeah, so we are going to basically cover a few things about data autonomy. We are going to talk about let me just check my screen. Yeah, so Ajay is going to talk about CBDCs, and we are going to talk about how do we ensure property rights and using Web3 technology, right? So to start with, I would want to ask basically Harsh on his views on ensuring property rights in the digital era. Is it the same as controlling control over your data? And what is data autonomy and why is it important? So Harsh, could you give us a brief on that? Could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, so first, like data autonomy, why is it even important in the first place? We come here from the place of libertarianism and say, okay, you have the agency in your life, but why do you want your data to be autonomous? Why do you not want it to give it out to others? So I like to generally speak with examples first and then give the backing of principles. We had a very good example in 2018 when Meta, back then Facebook, basically took the data and made personalized custom ads for each person to fudge the elections of US, right? And that was a mandate by the government which arm-twisted them. The same thing happened with Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey spoke about it in his recent podcast with Andrew as well, that he was working on Twitter and he was basically arm-twisted. He was removed and he was appointed again as a CEO later. So this is an example. Then you had the Prisma program by Obama, where basically the big tech sold all of the data to the government. And today, as we speak, like in the US as well as in India, they are building, Palantir is building a database, master database of all the citizens in the world for the US government, right? So that's number one. That's a big issue of data autonomy. And number two, we are at a place where they are trying to, the corporations, the big corporations who are monopolistic ambitions, are trying to manufacture culture by using your patterns, your habits, how you spend your money, where you give your time to, who you spend your money with, who you text, etc., etc. They're trying to personalize your AdWords, they're trying to personalize and manufacture a culture that basically drives you towards more and more consumerism, towards their own products. That's a big caveat of data autonomy. Number two, having your own control. For example, it's free speech, right? For example, if you say something offensive, that does not mean that piece of work or that piece of art or whatever should be taken down just because they own the platform, right? There should be some mechanism to be able to make sure that that thing stays there. This is what Web3 tries to do here. Web1, Web2, Web3. Web1 is basically where you could only read the data, read the internet. You had Web2, where you could read and write with the internet, interact with it, and Web3, where you can own part of the internet. So, yeah.
Yeah. So exactly, yeah. That is also, why I wanted to cover, something on, why open source, kind of ensures, there's more freedom and there are no backends to basically centralize applications. Have a lot of backends. They can be censored, by the big government. But then the decentralized ones who have an open source code, it may not be able to do that. So, since you are an open source developer, could you, throw some light on that, please?
So, in Bitcoin, we have this saying, don't trust, verify. Basically, it means that, and do your own research, everything about Bitcoin and many privacy projects, PGP, Linux, all of these things are open source. They are out there for anyone to read, write, contribute, have a look at, and change in that, and then fork it and just change and use it however they want, right? So that's number one, the base of the open source, that you as an individual have the right to make sure whatever software you are using is to your liking, where that data goes and who that data contributes to, right? Where is it exactly used? So that's number one. Number two, open source projects basically make sure they take a community effort. So a lot of things in Bitcoin as well do not come out of money, monetary incentive, but they come out of passion. There are bear cycles, there are bull cycles in the entire blockchain industry. When there are bear cycles, people lose money, people lose out on their savings and whatever. But in Bitcoin, we still work on open source and we make sure that the development continues on, right? That promotes what we call the long preference culture, basically where you don't have instant gratification and really want to work on something for long enough to make it happen something. So that's one of the core fundamentals of open source. Big things take time, and when you do not have corporate or VC support in open source, because there is VC will come in, they want the application to go in a certain way, and they want to have backings. For example, WhatsApp. So do you know WhatsApp is private? They say that they have encrypted to encrypted data, but when you report on a message, that message goes out. So there is a backdoor in WhatsApp for that message to go out there and reach the WhatsApp servers as someone checks in. So it's not E2E authenticated. That's not what encryption means. Encryption means there is no backend, there is no way that data can go out to someone other than you. Right? So these are the perils of closed source development. In open source, there is no such thing, right? You have a product, you know where it is going, and you know what's happening. Good examples: Bitcoin, Monero, PGP, privacy, good enough. Then you have Nostr. Nostr is a big one. We will talk about it more. But yeah, these are some of the open source projects which are basically making sure that your data is in your hands and your privacy is with you.
Sure. Thank you, Harsh, for that. I know you can keep on going about all these protocols. So, but then I wanted Ajay to speak on the Orwellian money, that is the programmable money, which is centralized as well, which are called CBDCs, and why basically decentralized assets have an advantage over it when it comes to individual autonomy, individual freedom. So Ajay, would you like to say something about CBDCs?
Yeah, I think today we are at crossroads between a decentralized currency and then on the other side we have sort of a surveillance services. Money is always a tool by the government to control individuals. I mean, it's one of the many tools that the state has to control individuals. And as libertarians or anybody who is really concerned about your freedom, your monetary freedom should actually be very important. Historically, civilization states have always controlled their citizens through monetary policy in a way. You know how Rome debased their currency and eventually the empire collapsed. We know where countries have instituted capital controls where they prevent you from moving your money out of the country. They want to control how you when use money as a form of transactions between individuals. And the moment the state has control over it, it has control over every aspect of your life. So when Satoshi proposed Bitcoin, it was something really revolutionary. For the first time, we had cash. Cash is actually a sort of an anonymous money, but still it's not insulated from policies of the central bank. The government could inflate at will. Gold was actually historically used for a long period of time, gold and silver. And that also ran into issues where we saw where countries started confiscating. That's what happened in the US because they wanted to go out to gold standard and they said you have to surrender all your gold. And Bitcoin in a way prevents the government from being able to do all that. The money you own is with you. It's if it's on your private wallet, no government on the planet can take it from you. And that gives us a lot of power. And also because of the way the protocol works, your transactions are largely anonymous. There are better ways to improve it. There are other privacy points. But in general, when you're looking at the cryptocurrency ecosystem, this was largely the whole crypto ecosystem came up as resistance to government policies, to central banks, and the amount of control government has in our life. Now, it was initially an anarchist project, a libertarian project, but eventually now it's come into the mainstream. So now we have governments which are sort of normalizing these, building policies on this, but they are also coming up with guidelines where they want, to be a part of the ecosystem, but they still want control over it. So CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, are a troubling trend because the government can track every single transaction, and it's not just about transaction. Now imagine, like for example, if you have cash in your wallet, you can hide it somewhere, say from the government. In the case of CBDC, you can't. Even though if it's on your wallet, the government can claw that money back. So these contracts, your smart contracts are written in such a way. And more troubling are the European norms like MiCA, where they want to whitelist everything, they want to do KYC. So it's actually a very problematic thing because they can sort of, this happened right now in Canada. If you look at it, a few years ago, all the truckers actually started protesting, and the Trudeau government froze all their bank accounts, and they couldn't. They shut down their entire movement by freezing their access to money. And even when they started Kickstarter, they could GoFundMe campaigns, all of them were delisted. So if you want to prevent the state from such tyranny, you need freedom with your money, and crypto guarantees that. We have to be very wary about the CBDCs. The Trump government thankfully has made statements saying that they would not support such a thing, which, as far as that aspect is good. We need citizens to demand that governments do not switch to CBDCs. And I think even when it comes to UPI, right? So UPI has a lot of privacy issues. The government wasn't supposed to know unless they actually demanded from the authority the details of it. But now we saw, just like a couple of weeks ago in Karnataka, everybody whose UPI transactions exceeded a certain amount of limit got notices from the GST department. So normally if the tax department wants to send a notice, they're supposed to investigate specifically on a targeted basis. What they've done is sort of like a mass surveillance, a blanket thing, and a lot of vendors who are not even liable by law to register for GST got notices. So now if this trend continues more and more, tomorrow they can just see what you are spending money for. And imagine in an authoritarian state where they say, this is some religious festival, you bought chicken, so you will be targeted. So once you give the state power, all sort of actors who are enabled by the state will also start creating trouble for you. So we should fight for it. We are already moving to a cashless society. The demonetization was actually a huge exercise in delegitimizing the usage of cash. It was just another exercise for the government to increase the control over people's lives. And it sort of gets eroded in little bit. We look at UPI as a tool of convenience, and we just use it. But we are surrendering our power, our autonomy, our privacy to the government. And if we don't resist it hard enough, soon there will be a point of time there will be no cash. Everything will be some sort of a CBDC, and the government will know exactly what you're spending your money for. And it's not their business, it's nobody's business what you spend your money on. And let's say you are living in some country which is absolutely collapsing, and you can't even do anything with it. Like you can't even move your money out of the country. Tomorrow if the government says like not a rupee can go out of the country, you are stuck in this country if you want to move out. So decentralized currencies allow you the way to bypass the government, bypass their capital controls, and of course that's the reason the state is also concerned, but they also have to think in terms.
Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, the state is obviously concerned, but as citizens, we should resist their attempts to impose this on us. Yeah. So yeah, that's good.
So exactly, yeah. There is definitely a need for state to, kind of give a top-down order. Basically mandate for free currencies, basically competition between currencies. But then there are also ways that people can at least hedge against the inflation. There are ways that they can maintain some sort of autonomy over the value that they want to retain in terms of the monetary value, right? So how can it happen? And what steps should people take to basically gain that kind of individual autonomy over digital assets. Digital assets, when I talk about it, I want to say Bitcoin. We have a lot of Bitcoiners who have come from different communities. So just wanted to say, give a shout out to them. How many Bitcoiners are here, by the way? Oh man, wow. I thought you are also a Bitcoiner? I'm sorry.
I'm not a miner. I
Okay.
accept it for a state.
Okay, that's great. No, I'm saying Bitcoiner. Yeah. So the mic is not working, so I have to be a little louder, but then yeah. So yeah, basically my point is that shunning centralization and choosing decentralization, how do we do that? Like Bitcoin is already decentralized, but then to use it in the right way, you have to self-custody it. And you have to basically use, even if you want to trade something, you want to do an exchange of assets, you should do it over something which is a peer-to-peer medium or which is a decentralized exchange. So those are the things that we have to basically keep in mind when it comes to maintaining individual autonomy and not trusting a third party with your assets, not giving it to them because you do not understand it. So you can take an effort to understand it. You can so many Bitcoiners are here. They campaign for basically self-custody and that kind of autonomy. And they are probably I guess. Yeah, Shreyan, also has a meetup that he wanted to talk about, and this is a Bitcoin meetup. So they have a network all over the country, and probably that is one place we can all go and we can learn about how to do it for ourselves. So yeah, as libertarians, I believe we all must learn about it, and we all must learn the right way.
One quick point: all Bitcoiners are libertarians first. Like getting the first Bitcoin is actually very easy. Like setting up a Facebook account. It's not that hard. It takes a certain bit of learning curve,
Yes.
but it's actually pretty easy. The technology part is actually not the learning curve. It's actually the ideological aspect of it. And that's the libertarians are the biggest ally that Bitcoin can have.
Exactly.
Same goes like you.
Exactly. I learned about Bitcoin, then I started listening to Eric Voorhees. I got into Web3. Even though I'm not a technical person, but then I made it a point that I should learn about what is Web3 and how to use your digital assets in the most ethically right way, right? So how to use basically go about those practices. So that is very important, and we want to talk about why Bitcoin is unstoppable, right? We talk a lot about Bitcoin, but then probably Harsh, if you can tell about tell something about that, in a probably a little less technical way, because Harsh is like super technical, so he tries to tame himself down so that he can be more.
So one of the problems with this state is that it attracts a very certain kind of people. In India, when you have the state and you have the bureaucracy, there is a saying in bureaucracy, we need to expand the bureaucracy for the expanding bureaucracy, right? For the state, it attracts a very certain kind of people in India, which aren't exactly empathetic when it comes to the people they are supposed to serve. The moment you remove money out of the equation, I suppose the incentives would be better for the people who become elected, become leaders, to actually care about the people they are serving. That's number one. Number two, Bitcoin in itself is built upon the trust of millions of node runners across the world and a group of miners that vehemently support the ecosystem, not because of the money incentive first, but because of the ideological incentive first and foremost. Tomorrow, you will see throughout Reddit, throughout Twitter, throughout any social media, Bitcoin people will be talking about, oh my God, it has fallen so much down, and now we are supposed to, we will hold it. We will not let it go. But when you go to these same places, when the Bitcoin is like breaking ceiling every day, 110, 115, 118, 120K every day, every other day. People don't care. People don't care. People don't have a tension. You know why? Because they know that fiat currency, which is being printed by an M2 money supply, 13.7 CAGR per year. You have inflation of 6 to 10% every year. Even in that, the numbers are fudged, right? You know that you are basically overcutting them all, and you are earning more than that just by like having Bitcoin and sitting on top of Bitcoin. So that's number one. The network, the trust, and the consensus itself makes it so that it cannot be stopped. You as a jurisdiction can basically say, okay, no miners. But how will you stop the node running? Will you go to every private computer? You will ban every private site that distributes Bitcoin node. You will ban GitHub also. What will you do? Right? That's the thing. And once you have those things, then comes the exchanges part. Now, exchanges part, Mr. Harish is sitting here from Unacoin, Ayush is from GetBit. So they will tell you guys a lot more on how to acquire Bitcoin in KYC or non-KYC way, and then also like help you out with where to take that money and keep it in a cold storage or something that is in your own control, which is what self-custody means. It's in your own control and the government cannot just snatch it away. So because of these things, Bitcoin cannot be taken away in your hand. And unlike gold, will throw you out of the country, as Ajay said, will throw you out of the country. You do not, we can leave you naked. You just have to remember your 12-worded password and you can leave the nation. You can come outside without any clothes. You can log into any computer anywhere and you can just get it back. You can get an entire of your network back. That's Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Thank you, Harsh. I also want to... So yeah, it is some level of censorship resistant. It may not be, when I talk about privacy and censorship resistance, it does not really mean, that you're a criminal. That is why you need that. Privacy is a natural right, and it is needed because, in a post-cash world, where are we with, we had privacy with cash, right? Where are we with it right now? So we do not have it in fiat. Any kind of fiat does not guarantee it because we are going all digital everywhere, all around the world. So that is where people, cypherpunks have come up with these things for people to learn about it and probably use it in their life. And so this is some sort of censorship resistant, and Bitcoin is unstoppable. So if it were up to the government, they would censor Bitcoin. If it was in a few places, they would track down the miners. They would probably get to the core team, the developers. But then since it is so decentralized, they are basically they are left with no option but to adopt it. So that is what censorship resistance is about. It's not just about, if you need censorship resistance, you're a criminal. Privacy can be for a person who's doing the right thing. It can be for a person who's doing the wrong thing. And so are the protocols which are being built. So the developers should not be held liable for something they have created, which is a tool, and that is being used by a criminal. There were cases in US wherein they have won and the developers have been freed. They were jailed before. Yeah, Tornado Cash is one of the protocols. So yeah, also since we are short of time, so I just wanted to talk about the last point, which is ensuring free speech. Basically enabling individual autonomy over speech. When you look at it as data, so there are tools like Nostr. We wanted to play a video by Jack Dorsey explaining what Nostr is, to give you a better understanding of it.
To free speech and to do it from a technology standpoint. A number of attempts to free speech and to do it from a technology standpoint, not at the benefit or the benevolence of a CEO, but something that can't be corrupted because the technology can't be corrupted. Nostr is one of those technologies. It's built with similar principles as Bitcoin. It's not a blockchain. but is completely decentralized. There's people all around the world running servers, and to attack any one particular person or the entire system, you have to go to every single one of these servers and wipe out the content or take the account down, which is impossible. The most interesting thing about Nostr is it gives your data back. It actually has you own your identity. So you've all had the experience of going to social media, putting in your email address, putting in a password, and then if you try to move it, it's extremely challenging. You don't own that data, the company owns it. In Nostr's case, you get two keys. You get a secret key, which you hold privately, and you get a public key, which you can give to anyone. And with that public key, you can share it and anyone can find you. With a secret key, you actually sign your messages. So only you can unlock your messages and only you can sign your messages or your videos or your images or your documents or whatever it is. So you have true authenticity. You're not relying upon a company to say, this is Jack. It's actually yourself. And it's all a function of you storing that key and keeping it safe. And what that means is with Nostr, you can log in to any social media client with your secret key, and you have all of your data, and you can move it anywhere you want. The important thing is you own it. They can't take it away from you. They can't shut it down. And they can't hide particular things or add things after the fact. So this is really, really important in the age of AI, where in a few years, you are not going to know the difference between something that is real and something that is fake. We need technologies that you can actually sign and you have the authenticity to do so, and only you to do that. And that's what something like Nostr looks like.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions, we are still here for a couple of minutes, but yeah. Okay, we'll take it afterwards into a combined panel. So thank you, everyone.
Oh, submit. We can do it after that. Okay, all right. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the two panels that we have had so far. Satnik, I'm sorry you've been waiting for a while on the background. Everyone, please welcome Satnik Paul to his live streaming and take it away, Satnik.
Thanks a lot, all of you. Unfortunately, I'm not discussing something, exciting like Bitcoin. I'd like to talk to you about education, the education system, to be precise. I'm a comparative sociologist with a doctoral degree from the National University of Singapore. I would like to talk to you today about my experience actually in a previous life, part of my life actually, as an educator in a government institute and a former bureaucrat. One thing that I would like to say to all of you, when you see a government-funded institute in India, an educational institute, is that there's a scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker burns everyone's money. That's what I'm reminded of when I see a government-funded educational institute. Apart from the fact that recently, from where I am, from where I stay, West Bengal, there have been numerous scams in education institutes where people have been recruited using taxpayer dollars at the whims and fancies of the ruling elite. There is also the problem of the huge inadequacy of the government in providing the proper skill sets to people. We live in an age when technology is rapidly evolving. It is creating strides. We now use we're now communicating between thousands and thousands of kilometers almost effortlessly without any lag. And all this is possible because of the technological and other forms of innovation that have happened in some institutes somewhere. But unfortunately, the present scenario is such that the government-funded institutes in India, the government institutes in India, do not provide us, our future generations and our present generations, with the proper skills and the knowledge to build things on our own. They are absolutely lagging, and if you go to any institute right now, and if you see a recording of an institute which is run by the government in the 1970s, I can assure you that the institutes right now are way worse. There's a time and a reason I have decided to address you all on this issue. It is because the government keeps on trying to spend more money on education, thinking that it's a problem that they can solve by throwing money at. Unfortunately, it's because the government perceives school and college education as a way to give uh, jobs, permanent jobs, to a certain section of the educated electorate, so that there are no questions related to its inefficiencies. This is why the state of education in India is so horrible. It's unable to not only cater to the skill sets that are necessary in today's life. It's also absolutely useless and keeps a large section of the society unskilled and unable to provide for itself, because there are the government institutes that I'm talking about are essentially degree mills. They produce degrees and nothing else, and these degrees are absolutely useless when you go into the job market. And the government keeps doing this, like I said, in order to cater to a certain section, a very small part of its electorate, which is educated and may ask questions about its policies and inefficiencies. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that increasing government spending on education is a bad idea. But also the government must understand, and I think it should be the demand of the more educated sections of Indians, that the government stops the inefficiencies that are already present in the education system today. It is not producing merit, it is not producing quality, it is simply producing degrees that are absolutely useless. And as such, we have to understand that it is our taxpayer money that is being completely wasted in this pursuit, not of excellence, but of mediocrity. The government institutes that, even the government institutes that perform well, a few come to mind. For example, Presidency College in Calcutta, it's my alma mater. Presidency College started off as a private institute. Essentially, it was funded by a lot of merchant elites. So even when we see that there are government institutes that perform well, these were essentially private institutes that were nationalized later. So even the excellence that certain government institutes bring to the table are not because they were government institutes, but because they were formerly private institutes. We cannot keep reproducing the mediocrity of the more remote institutes that are run by the government in every way and form when the government decides to spend more on education, as it apparently is trying to do. Now, my other point that I would try to make is that if you look at the way in which education is imparted in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities and even the villages, you will see a picture that is absolutely dismal. The government has schools and colleges that have no attendance. There are high dropout rates. There are very few professors and teachers who perform, and even when they do, the children they are unable to learn adequately because of the lack of infrastructure and government support and whatnot. And the government apparently spends crores and crores of money behind these institutes. So I don't know where that goes. But I can assure you this, that it does not go to the welfare of the students. What we see are crores of your money and my money being flushed down the drain in what can be only described as optics. And the worst part of a government institute is that there are no penalties for bad performance. A teacher or an educator can continue to give substandard lectures, substandard education skills, and will not be penalized in any way or form. If anything, the private institutes that we see have to either perform or perish. Teachers there have to perform or perish. Therefore, for the sake of the next generation as well as the present young generation, we must see greater accountability. And since the greater accountability is cannot be expected from the government, we must ask for greater freedoms in establishing educational institutes in the country. The sheer problems that people face when they want to create an educational institute are so high, are so varied, apart from the usual nonsense of hafta and hafta wasuli and stuff like that. The very regulations that it has to go through, including teaching a pre-decided government syllabus, which is totally at the whims and fancies of the left and right, whoever's ruling in which state. These create disparities in society that are actually widening the wealth gap. If I'm to think like a Marxist for a minute there, it's actually creating a section of privileged elites who can send their kids to, who obviously send their kids to more private institutions, because everyone wants to do that, eventually. But there are also sections who cannot afford to do it, and the government does not allow for cheaper alternatives in the private sector. And especially given my experience in a state like West Bengal, which had a very vibrant educational and research, a lot of research institutes where a number of Nobel Prize winners also came from. West Bengal's educational institutes are horrible right now. And most importantly, apart from the absolute corruption and the terrible state of infrastructure that they have, there is the other problem that West Bengal, the families of West Bengal, the parents of people in West Bengal, spend a large section of their incomes, 20-30% of their incomes, on providing private tuitions to their children who attend government institutes. So ultimately, it's not even the fact that the government institute is able to quell the rising costs of the middle classes. The people, because the standards are so inadequate, the people have to pay out of pocket to private individuals who will teach their children. This is exactly what Susan Jacoby observed when she was touring the USSR and observing its schools. That in the USSR, former USSR, there was a tendency for taking tuitions, private tuitions. In fact, it is this system of private tuitions that actually furthered the wealth gap, because then people without having any recourse have to spend money, or they cannot afford spend a lot of money on private tutors, or they cannot afford the best for their children. So as a result, what we have is, we have not only a growing mediocrity in the educational sector, we also have rampant corruption, large amounts of money which are gone without anyone knowing where it went. No accountability of teachers and professors in for their students. And not just that, we have an absolute wastage of taxpayers' money, where there is no reward or penalization if people mess up. So a lot of 26,000 people just lost their jobs in West Bengal recently, because the government had decided to hire many of them based on their personal preferences and corrupt practices. But it's not just the 26,000 jobs that were lost. These were 26,000 families that were suddenly given the notice that their so-called permanent jobs were no longer permanent, no longer there. And this has left thousands of schools unattended in the state of West Bengal. And because of the lack of job opportunities in West Bengal and the lack of and the low per capita GDP in the state, people are no longer able to afford private education, which is also a luxury, which wouldn't have been a luxury if the government had allowed more PPP models or more private players to enter the market. The private educational institutes that are there in the state right now are run by either ministers or powerful individuals who again do not answer to anyone, who are running these institutes simply on the back of the mediocrity of the government institutes. So therefore, my my anecdotal understanding, my personal understanding of the education system as an educator and as a former teacher in a government institute myself, all I can say is that spending more money on government institutes will simply flush that money down the drain. It's not necessary, and it is going to simply foster greater mediocrity and corruption in society. And I believe that the education system of India will benefit the most when all the shackles from private education are taken away. When parents have greater choice over what their children want to learn, have to learn, they have they have more choices available to them, which suit their budget, which suit their monthly income, which obviously is going to take up a lot. People always ask me whenever I try to talk about privatization, that what about the poor? The poor do not have choices. That's the whole problem. It is all about choices and freedom, and I believe that the LPI, thanks to Tushar and Ajay and others for giving me this time to talk about this issue. And I believe it's a very important issue for all of us, who who are educators, not educators, who have children, who have young relatives, who have friends, who have kids, all of us who are worried about government intervention in different aspects of education, including the recent controversies related to various textbooks and stuff. Everything is the problem because the government tries to control education from the top, and it's always a failure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, and it was great, very insightful, and we fully believe that privatization is the best way forward for bringing affordable education. So thank you for your time, and see you.
Should I wait for questions, or can we go?
We are getting a bit late, so
okay, yeah, I get it.
If you are willing to stay a bit late, then we can have the question answer session.
Yeah, I can switch off, and we can have the questions later. Yeah.
Okay. The question answer start at 5:30, so you can join then again.
Okay, I can join then. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So women's panel. Where is Pooja? पूजा Okay, so guys, we'll have another panel and then we'll have the question answer session. Okay, so Dr. Kushal is here. So, hello, sir.
Hello.
Yeah. So, sir, please give an introduction and let's start with your session, please.
Okay. So let me start by introducing myself a little bit. So I'm Kushal Babil. Very nice to be getting to interact with you all. I did my PhD from Cornell, working on blockchains, and I work right now at one of the leading companies in the center of blockchain industry in New York. And I'm here to share some perspective about what I've seen in the blockchain industry, how it relates to the policies of the Indian government, and give you a little bit of perspective on where I see things from a more research point of view, the possibilities that I see, which are beyond just the use of cryptocurrency as money and so on. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky subject to always talk about in public. My usual art is to just write papers, write blog posts, write technical material. But it's a little bit tricky because people have their own beliefs. As much as we would like to believe that there's no tribalism, and we've evolved past that, there's a lot of tribalism in crypto still. People have their favorite projects, they have their favorite currencies, and so on. But let me talk about it in a more general manner. And before I do that, an incident comes to my mind where I was in the habit of educating or talking to my, friends, family about what is blockchain, what are the new things here, and so on. And I was talking to my uncle one day, and we had a nice long session where I thought I was making progress. We were aligning on things, and I was, telling him all the nice things about what is blockchain, what is Bitcoin, what are cryptocurrencies. And then in order to show that he's also on board, he said, yeah, I know there's a lot of Bitcoin being underground in China and they're taking out pretty frequently. And then I realized after a while that he meant, he was referring to Bitcoin mining actually. And he had taken the word quite literally. And so that kind of, gave me a realization that, things are not always perceived as they are in the technical realm. So with that caveat, let me make an attempt to talk to you about the technical possibilities that are unlocked by blockchains more broadly. Then I'll talk about what are the steps that the Indian government has taken both to help support it and also to stifle it, quite frankly. And I'll give you some very concrete points in time where things have really taken a sharp turn for the worse, and it becomes quite apparent the stance that the Indian government has towards these. And then I'll talk about what effects or what results has it had so far, so that we have a realistic assessment of where things are, what we can do to improve them, and so on. All right. So, taking a step back and looking at blockchains more broadly, not just from the point of view of cryptocurrencies.
Sir, can you pull your camera a bit down?
Is this good?
Yeah, this is good.
Okay. So, taking a broad view of blockchains and not just looking at it from the cryptocurrency point of view, I'll talk about whether you can actually separate the two or whether they are inherently linked. There are many use cases that come to mind, and especially things that really apply to India very directly, which I see there's no problem from a technical point of view. It's mostly an issue of encouragement, an issue of culture, an issue of having friendly regulations, not to support crypto, but just to let it flourish, let it do its own thing, and not actively try to stifle it. So a few things that directly seem to apply, and I received queries from friends and family about this use case. This is the number one use case that people talk to me about. The first one is remittances. And, a lot of people who work outside or are going outside and want to send money back to their family to support them. The figures are staggering. There's lots and lots of remittances in India, probably the largest in the world because of the diaspora. Every time you do remittances, you have to pay 1%, 2%, 3% as a tax to the banks or to the middlemen. And it still takes 6-7 days to settle those transactions. But in my own experience, remittance is one of the best use cases of crypto for India, where money can be sent very easily, very quickly, and with very little cost, and at very good exchange rates. And this is ultimately a tax on the citizen. It's not really, it's not really going in any productive use case. It's just literally paying the banks or paying the middlemen a few percentage points, and that affects people in a very direct way. There are a few other friendly things that are going on, at least in the US regulations landscape. So you must have all heard about, the stablecoin bill that has come out and that has been now passed in the US. It's a very good case study that I think that I think is we can contrast it with how things can be from a regulation point of view. So the bill really, when crypto was originally proposed, there were many people who said, okay, it's an actually challenge to the fiat currency. It challenges the US dollar and so on. But to some people's surprise, I would say, argue many people's surprise, including mine, it is cementing the dominance of US dollar in the world more and more. And the reason for that is, if you look at the biggest holders of the treasuries and biggest holders of the government debt in the US, I believe somewhere in the top 10 now features stablecoin issuers, because what they're doing is they're buying these US dollars from the government, they are holding it in their treasuries or they're holding it in their reserves, and then they're issuing US dollars, stable coins on blockchains. And so it's very counterintuitively, instead of challenging the US dollar, it's actually exporting the dominance of US dollar all over the world, because the government has embraced stable coins. So that's a very interesting case study of how things can be counterintuitive if you let it play out, if you don't actively stifle innovation. And I'll come to that part and the government's role in India around that. And I'll also talk about a few personal experiences there. So I'd like to kind of then talk about a few more use cases which are not seen yet at a broad scale, but which are very much in the realm of possibility, and I see no reason that they don't happen in the next few years, at least where crypto is allowed to operate. You want to think of crypto as really a coordination engine. So yes, there is a cryptocurrency part of it, but at a fundamental level, if you think about it, go deeper and deeper and so on, and try to reason about it from the first principles point of view, it really is a coordination engine. And what I mean by that is it allows groups of people to coordinate together without establishing relationships, without establishing upfront reputations, and without needing to establish that kind of trust, which is very expensive, very time taking, in a very trustless way. Trustless is this word which is I consider it an oxymoron, because it kind of has this connotation that there's less trust, but in fact it leads to more trust. So if you don't have to trust somebody, that means you can coordinate more freely. So think of it as a coordination engine. And once you think of it, there are many use cases that instantly make sense. Things like civic incentives. We complain that the many big cities in India are suffer from very poor civic sense, very poor infrastructure, very poor community sense of community, where people take responsibility for different services in their community and so on. There are very direct applications of blockchains, where you can create these communities, you can create incentives for them in order to operate, in order to coordinate. So think of it as really the coordination engine. I keep coming back to this point, that think of it as coordination engine. And of course, there are then finally very direct use cases of crypto where you can do direct benefit transfers without any leakages in the middlemen. Very famously, Rajiv Gandhi had admitted that if he sends, 1 rupee from Delhi, a very minuscule fraction of it reaches to the citizen for which that money is meant. And there's no reason that you can't do it in a transparent, efficient manner through blockchains if you are willing to support that. So it has this property of fostering trust, fostering the sense of community, and we know that this we in our everyday life, we know so inherently that one of the biggest problems in India, both from a business point of view, civic sense point of view, government sense point of view, is this lack of trust. There's a trust deficit. It's a trust deficit society because there's so much rampant corruption. There's in general a lack of good enforcement, good accountability, that there's so much trust deficit. I remember there was a contract that my that my father had entered into for his business, and just non-payment of contracts and lack of enforcement for it from the government, especially from the judiciary. I want to say, sorry, not government, from the judiciary. We are all familiar with the pending cases. That's the number one problem that the citizenry has with the judiciary. And the lack of enforcement of contract really hurts businesses, and I've seen that in firsthand in my experience. And with smart contracts, you can have you can restore this trust deficit. You can have very good enforcement of contracts. So this is a long laundry list of very powerful use cases, some of which are already happening in the world outside India, and some of which are very much just a matter of time, not a matter of if whether they'll happen or not. And I'm mostly interested in exploring this from the point of view of how it directly applies to the unique problems of India, and that's why I mentioned remittances, the trust deficitness, the civic incentives, the sense of community incentives, and so on. Now let me shift gears a little bit, and let me talk about kind of have a retrospective of the, call it, last half a decade of the policies around blockchains and cryptocurrencies. One point that is often missed in blockchain circles, even in the technical circles, is that there's this very strange idea that the regulators have come up with in India, which is that we will allow blockchains but will not allow cryptocurrencies. Okay, this is very interesting that somebody sitting in Delhi thought about this idea, and they must have patted themselves on the back thinking this is a great idea. Now there's a fundamental problem with that idea. You'd be very surprised that the core technology that underpins blockchains, so that would be consensus protocols, that would be getting a little bit technical here, but that would be some of the cryptographic primitives and so on. That's why it's called cryptocurrency. The core technology that underlies all of it was actually invented in the 80s. So in 1982, you had the first consensus protocols out there from Leslie Lamport. You had the cryptography that we are only building now. Those were actually written about from researchers in the 80s. So this technology has been around. The blockchain technology has been around. But then what has sparked this very dramatic rise in cryptocurrencies and blockchain interest is not the technology. It's the fact that in 2008, somebody figured out how you can make that technology permissionless through the use of cryptocurrency. Right? If you only wanted to have the permissioned blockchain protocols like our government envisions, then yes, you don't maybe need cryptocurrencies. All the blockchain decentralized nodes can be run by government or can be run by permissioned people that the people in Delhi like. but really it kind of misses the core point of what has allowed blockchains to take over in such a dramatic way. And that is this idea that because you have an inherent currency, because you have an inherent incentive system built into, you can make the system permissionless, you can open it up, you can allow permissionless innovation where nobody needs to take permission to build on the blockchain, nobody needs to take permission to take custody of their funds, and so on. So there's this very bizarre idea in government that has come up with, and it arises from a lack of fundamental understanding of what are cryptocurrencies and what are blockchains. So if one thing that I always tell when I meet some regulators, I tell them that you have to think about it in the overall ecosystem point of view. You cannot build a small incubator in RBI. What I call these things as really, it's sometimes I don't know whether I want to laugh or whether I want to cry at these things, but it's laughable that they think that building a small incubator in RBI can really deliver the innovation that we need. You have to embrace the innovation without having any biases about where this innovation will lead. At least let it flourish. Maybe if you're not even supporting it, let it flourish, see where things lead. And I mentioned a very counterintuitive example of how stable coins are exporting the dominance. There's no reason that Indian stablecoin, rupee stablecoin cannot be issued to the neighborhood countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, where the currency is legitimate and you can cement its position more and more. So thinking of it from a really world power point of view, we want to project world power, but we don't think of it from that point of view. The incubators in RBI are really like these token gestures. As I said, I don't know whether I want to laugh or cry at them, but token gestures, just a performative action where if I just do this, then I'll be seen as being innovative. And those really don't work out, as we have seen. I was personally involved in some of these efforts with RBI and so on, and it just can't be done because it's like 5 people working on the technology, when in the open world there are hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands people working on this technology with billions and billions of dollars of funding. And so you have to really embrace innovation rather than have these biases where this innovation will lead. Because many times, as we have seen in the cases of internet and so on, these innovations actually lead to unexpected prosperity, unexpected ways of figuring itself out. And so, this idea of stifling innovation by just having biases and prejudices about what that technology is really a very bad attitude towards innovation, I would say. Like some regulators have decided that, okay, this leads to illicit money, this leads to money laundering and so on, and so we want to ban it. Well, this is not a problem that cannot be solved. There are very legitimate ways where you can solve this problem. And if you are trying to, so let me now talk about what are the concrete steps the government has taken.
Sorry, sir, we are a bit short of time. So
okay. So let me just wrap up by really highlighting 2 draconian things that the government has done. In 2018, RBI had this idea that let's ban cryptocurrencies without understanding what cryptocurrencies are. And that led to an embarrassment where they discovered that they cannot ban it. And so when they realized they cannot ban it after a few years, they said, okay, let's allow it. Well, it was not a choice for them. The second one is the budget of 2022. If you think 1999 was a great year for India's liberalization, I would say 2022 was a very dark, there was a very dark provision in the budget. And that was this idea of, they subtly slipped in draconian regulations through taxes, where there was 30% flat tax only on your capital gains, which could not be. There was this brilliant, in a satirical sense, there was this brilliant idea that somebody had that let's only tax gains, let's not tax losses. And so anybody who knows anything about finance knows that when you have capital gains, when you buy stocks, when you are trading, when you have exchanges, 51% of your trades are going to be positive and 49 negative. That's how you make profit of 2%. But if you only end up paying taxes on 51%, a flat tax of 30% on gains, that leads to just completely unworkable ways of trading cryptocurrencies or having any ecosystem around it. And then there was 1% TDS on it on the entire volume. So if you are doing $1 million of volume in a day as an exchange, you have to pay 1% of that as a tax. And we know 1 million is nothing in volumes for exchanges. And so that imposes severe crippling working capital requirements on these businesses. And what happened as a result is that the very amazing exchanges that we had in India was actually quite ahead in embracing the innovation. There were many good startups. Polygon is one of them. Many great people like yourselves who understand this technology so much better. But all of that was, dealt a very body blow in 2022 because now all the exchanges migrated out of India and 90% of the volume dried up. And as a result, the ecosystem was just left starving. So I want to just, I know it's a little bit of a grim note to end on, but I want to first, it'd be disservice for me to talk about, only the nice and hopeful things. But the reality is that it was really done in a crippling fashion and in a way where it was a sleight of hand, where it was not explicit, but subtly slipped into the budget that, okay, we'll have these crippling tax regulations, and the ecosystem was just starved. All the blood was sucked out of it. And on that grim note, but very realistic note, I'd like to end here. And then I'd be available for any questions, interactions. You can also reach out to me on Twitter. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. We are a bit late of time, so we'll have the question answer session by 5:30, somewhere around 5:30. If you have the time, you can join them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll have the women's panel now. So.
So I will be brief in my remarks and then pass it on to the co-panelists. But first I have a question from the audience. In this room, there is a very peculiar feature connected with this panel. Can anyone just look around?
I can look around, I can tell you.
Just as...
Less number of women.
Well, that's not actually what I was referring to, but please look around one more time. It's very obvious, conspicuous.
A lot of those
left-leaning figures still.
There's no women. There's no women in there. Not a single portrait. If you walk the halls of this particular floor, you'll see very few women up there, and I think that's an abomination.
There's also no one right-leaning economically.
Yes, I agree, but there's a lack of women too, and this is a women's panel. All right. So with that, well, Indira Gandhi is there, but she's the daughter of the first Prime Minister of India, so we're going to ignore that and look at.
The first Prime Minister of India.
Also, I'm actually really grateful to see 11 women here in total present since morning, because at the first summit it was just me and someone from SFL. I think she was only there to observe. So I'm really happy that women have showed interest. A special mention to Ekta's mother, Ms. Rani. Thank you for coming, ma'am. All right. So for our panel, we delineated 4 questions that we will answer broadly, and we'll just focus on them and move on. So how did you get introduced to or interested in libertarianism? Why do you think other women should get involved with this ideology? Is a gendered approach essential to thinking about liberty in India, which basically means all ideologies in India kind of separate men, women, and other genders. Mostly they club women with the other genders. So is it necessary to really talk about liberty in a gendered way? Are men and women and other genders really that different when it comes to being oppressed, to use that term very loosely? And how do you think libertarianism resolves the disparities that exist between different genders due to patriarchy? Now, I'll let my co-panelists talk first, and then I will talk at the end. Ekta, we'll start with you.
I came to libertarianism just growing up in India, in socialist India, and through reading, I read a lot of Ayn Rand, then I studied in the States, and I saw how a free market, capitalist economy functioned. If you went to a grocery store, you would find 1,000 types of bread. In every grocery store, they were priced differently. And we just didn't have that in India. We had like a nanny state that decided what a businessman should charge for a price of bread. And we had like no choice. When I was growing up, there was only Fiat and Ambassador. So that's how I came into libertarianism, and also through personal experience. It's very demoralizing to run a business in India, to do anything lucrative in India, because the state just treats you like a criminal, and doesn't realize how important it is for an individual to own stuff and to make money and to create wealth. We worship goddesses, but we treat wealth creators like criminals. So I think those were my experiences, and of course reading Thomas Sowell, Bastiat, the Austrian school of economists. You just come to realize that the best way is small government, minimum regulation, and as long as we're not killing one another and poisoning each other, we should just be left laissez-faire. Yeah.
Can you answer all the questions?
Oh, should we just go with
Go ahead.
So I think speaking of goddesses, like, I remember growing up with a lot of Amar Chitrakatha, and if you think of, and it was this cognitive dissonance where on one hand in any of our actual stories it's about questioning authority, about being sure for yourself, and then you go to school and you need permission to drink water from your water bottle. And I think like I just had an inherent sense of anti-authoritarianism growing up here. And in fact, I went to the US because I just, like, I was so offended by having to listen to my teachers, and I was like, I cannot survive any more of this. So I found a way to get to the US to go to college. And there, I mean, colleges at the time were pretty left-leaning. So, I had my full education in leftist ideology, but then I read then I took an econ class, and it's like one truth is more persuasive than 100 stories. So, and then I came back to India. I studied at Takshashila, and I started to see that most of the problems, I thought that I wanted to write policy, but it seemed like we would just be better off if the government did less. So that was like the arc of my journey into libertarianism.
That was amazing. For me, interest in libertarianism was a very personal journey. I went through a very rebellious phase. When I was in class 12th, I just wanted to bunk classes, not listen to the teachers. I didn't really care, and someone recommended that I read Ayn Rand. I was good at understanding social science, understanding patterns, sometimes understanding mathematics. I was good at that, but I just didn't want to sit and learn in a classroom. Now, ironically, I am a lecturer today, so I have to persuade everyone to stay in school now. I read Ayn Rand, I liked the characters, I liked the premise, and I loved the perfectionism associated with it. And I stuck to libertarianism. There's a very famous saying that goes around in JNU and academic circles. By the time you're 20, if you're not a socialist, you don't have a heart. By the time you're 30, if you are a socialist, you don't have a mind. So you, yeah, and actually, people say, though only in informal circles, that it applies more to women. I was initiated into academia by libertarianism, and I'm going to stay a libertarian for life, I think, because I, at the moment, do not see any other ideology that matches it or beats it in any way or form. It's about liberty, you get to do what you want, but there is a caveat. Even though I was introduced to libertarianism by Ayn Rand's book, The Fountainhead, I would advise everyone to focus on the second book, where the protagonist, Atlas Shrugged. Dagny is the protagonist, and she's probably a better idol for women than Dominique from Fountainhead, because I assure you, no woman acts that way. So let's keep that in mind and move on to the next question. Okay, so why do you think other women should get involved with this ideology? Ekta.
I think, challenging authority and putting up your thumb to authority is one of the oldest and most innate human experiences. And why should women get involved? Because we're people. Everything, economics, the way this country is managed, everything affects us. Women should get into libertarianism in this country, especially because in this country it's sort of almost codified on how women should behave, how they should dress, where they can go, and these sort of things. And if we just start becoming people who don't care about stuff like that, I think women in India will have a better life. They can pursue what they want, they can marry who they want to, they can, live their life on their own terms. And I think that is not only very liberating, but it also makes for a very good life.
Yeah, so, all of those social points of social freedom, but if you hear any feminist talk, often they'll say something like, oh, like the rich women, and then like, well, why can't all women be the rich women? Like, I think in life, a lot of problems are solved with money. And like a lot of oppression gets worse when you don't have money. So anything that gets in the way of women making money actually gets in the way of their oppression. And in India, that's just like the state is as guilty as any, or like more guilty than most. So, in like all the ways the state hurts growth, the state hurts jobs, that hurts women more. Like India has the lowest female workforce participation of most countries. So this is disproportionately hurting women. And think of things like, classifying homes as commercial versus residential. Women are much more likely to start businesses from home, so now you've put an obstacle in one way they can have economic freedom. Like a lot of forced maternity policies on companies, this doesn't make companies progressive, it just means they're less likely to hire women of that age group. And Gary Becker did good research on showing that when you introduce competition, it just becomes too costly to discriminate, because everybody is finding, everyone needs to be super efficient. So if you have this huge labor pool that no one's hiring, then competition is going to lead you to hire it. So he did this research for African Americans, and then later feminists did the same research for women. But across the board, libertarianism is better for economic opportunities for women, and that ends up just being downstream of solving a lot of problems of oppression for women. So yeah, I think though that's the...
Okay, good. I think my co-panelists have said a lot. I just say that the history of patriarchy is the history of the state and men interfering with women's lives. And libertarianism opposes that. But there's another reason why I think all women should at least give it a chance. Don't just discard it by saying that the libertarian right is conflated with the conservative right. We're not. No one is. I would never support a policy that goes anti-women or against women's bodily autonomy. The reason is that we're always taught socialist policies, socialist thinkers, communist thinkers. Our books are full of them. Our education system is catered towards that. There's no libertarian education system that exists across the world. Maybe in Argentina we may see something. There are think tanks in the US, you've got Cato, IHS, you've got think tanks in Canada, but very few in the mainstream education system, so you'd never even get to hear about it, except maybe via the popular culture where Ayn Rand is revered.
Yeah.
So just sit down, pick it up, watch videos, watch funny videos on libertarianism. Actually, the funniest videos you'll find online related to education are made by libertarians. So please do watch them, explore it, and see what you think about it. So the third question is a gendered approach essential to thinking about liberty in India? I've explained the question before, and now over to you, Ekta.
I'm not sure how to answer this, but I do think that historically women in India have been denied equal treatment. So I guess there is a space for that. I don't feel like I should be discriminated against because I'm a woman. I think there should be just very little government, and special interests will sort themselves out, be it women or any kind of industry or anything like that.
Yeah, I think when you think about it structurally, it's true that maybe women face certain problems that other people don't. But if I were to give tactical advice, I think it's just always better to think of yourself as an individual. Yeah. And like thinking of yourself in a group just does not help you. So, like for example, starting a company. I work in AI. If I thought of the percentage of women in AI, or if I thought of myself in those terms, it's just not a useful way to think. It's not that relevant. And yeah, and I think even in terms of advocating for interest, if everybody advocated for their own interests, for their own problems they face, you would have better outcomes rather than you imagining yourself as part of this group and then trying to guess their interests. We understand this in general for economics, but it's also true for any interest. So yeah, I think that in general, you should think of yourself as an individual.
Okay, thank you. For me, I think yes, a gendered approach is essential to thinking about liberty for our country. What I do not like is making women's caucuses, making other gender, third gender caucuses, and differentiating between people such that it turns into a gender war. So that's something that I would not advocate for, but yes, India is an extremely peculiar case, peculiar society. Even worshipping goddesses and all, I think that has been spoken about, but today we see women are in the workforce and they work as hard as men to get 1/10 of the results actually. We have to work harder and we don't even get the same results, we're not heard, our voices are suppressed, and it does happen in the workforce. And these are women who are just making a living. There's no rich daddy backing them. So yes, I do think that a gendered approach is necessary, but it should not turn into a gender war where all the time online you see trolls attacking each other. I think that's really bad for the propagation of the human race, to be very honest about it. Now the fourth question. How do you think libertarianism solves disparities that exist between different genders due to patriarchy?
Libertarianism doesn't claim to engineer equality. It insists on fairness. It removes state-imposed barriers and lets people build upwards. When the state stops playing parent, preacher, or punisher, women aren't beholden to arbitrary power structures. They deal with society as equals, not subjects. For instance, legal reforms and property rights, marriage or entrepreneurship don't need to be for women. They just need to be neutral and enforced. Once you secure equal rules and real freedom of choice, women can and do rise. The solution to patriarchy isn't more control, it's more liberty.
Yeah, I think maybe I can use a couple of examples of, classic problems under patriarchy. So one problem is, let's say, a lack of freedom that girls feel in their homes. So often you'll see that this goes past when you're 18. I think you just see so many cases when girls start earning their own money, suddenly they're able to push back. Like maybe they get to move out and then they really can have a life of their own. Or even just bringing income to the family gives them leverage. And I think so this is the literal definition of patriarchy, right? Again, within family, again, within a marriage, if you have the freedom to walk away, that gives you much more leverage than the state protecting you retroactively, right? Saying that, hey, maybe then I can go file a case and go. No, it's so much more easy if you just have freedom to leave. So anything that increases your economic freedom is going to push back ultimately and give you broader freedom. So instead of this idea that we can legislate people into being better human beings, and so we can say, hey, everybody should be a feminist, so let's think of the laws that, I think instead we should think of how do we empower people so that you don't need the protection of the state. and economic empowerment is probably the most powerful way.
Great answers, guys. So for me, libertarianism solves this disparity by bringing the focus back to merit. Historically, what happens is if you're a man and you're in tech, and she's in tech, and probably she'd agree with me, I'm not sure. If you're in tech and you're a man, you would be given more leeway. And if you're a woman, probably not. At least that happens in economics. So, this kind of disparity is probably eliminated in an ideal libertarian society, but it's a psychological issue. It's group thinking. So I'm not sure how that would turn out. But ideally, in a libertarian society, the focus is on merit. If you're good at your job, you rise. If you're not, you fail. It's literally as simple as that. So that's how I think libertarianism solves the disparities that exist between different genders. So that's the panel for us. We'll be done. Very short and brief. Are we taking questions?
Yeah.
For women, I think we can.
Yeah, take the question. 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have 5 minutes for Q&A. Brevity is a skill.
So there are actually two struggles described. One is, say, discrimination or oppression by the state, and the other is by the society, like not state, but let's say family or community and so on. And libertarians are generally opposed to the state tyranny, but not like tyranny at a more lower level, like local level. So isn't feminism kind of inherently opposite of libertarianism? Then if you consider like the tyranny from say family level or social level as bad thing and something to be say eliminated or regulated away.
I'm just going to ask you one question back because I think Ekta just said she disagrees with you, and I'm going to
I don't think you can put us in these rubrics where libertarians are fighting against the state, but they're oppressed by their family. I don't think so. I'm a libertarian. I, resent the state, all of that. But I come from a pretty liberal family, and dare my brother say something to me, I would give him back.
No, sorry, it is not a person.
But I am an individual libertarian, and I think everyone who's a libertarian is pretty emancipated.
I understand. I think you're saying that basically, on one hand, you want libertarianism only answers the question of what should we do about the state, versus a lot of the problems of women's oppression are from society, right?
And also, a lot of laws we have are actually protecting women against the society.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so that which you rely on the state for, right? I think that's the point on, a lot of those laws start from the assumption that women are from a position of weakness. And a lot of that weakness comes from economic weakness because the reason, for example, we have such strict laws in marriage is because most women don't work. So most women, so they need a lot of protections. But if with competition, it makes it so even if you start with a discriminatory society, with competition, it makes it really costly to discriminate. And so you do end up having so over time, it will trend towards women having economic equality. And once you are in that position, actually a lot of these other problems go away. So the whole argument is that this approach of relying on the state to protect women is totally mistaken. Instead, you need to allow women to be in the same position as men, to have the same economic freedom, so then they can protect themselves and you don't need the state to protect them. So yeah, the idea is we don't want to be this protected, the true ideal is that we are individuals ultimately. We don't need to be a protected class forever.
From me on this, I'd only say that, it's a very complicated issue. I disagree on this matter with both my panelists. I do think we need certain laws to protect women because equality, the kind of social structure they are describing only exists in certain urban areas and sometimes not even in those urban areas. So we have to acknowledge there's a disparity. But in terms of laws, yes, they're biased against men. I do agree if that's what you're getting at.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that laws exist to like reduce unfairness. Uh,
No, there are no laws to reduce unfairness.
For example, like maternity
Benefits, yeah, how is that?
Exactly. I mean, it is to make working more fairer, right?
Yeah.
Or at least in theory.
Yeah, so we say
We
that we
need
have the
those
best
laws.
maternity benefits of all. Like India likes to say stuff like that, but also women in India have the lowest workforce participation. So
True.
maybe those things are some. So I think ultimately, maybe when you think about it, maybe not all of these. Yeah, in general, maybe if we go policy by policy, we can always think of a way that does not require state intervention, and maybe where state intervention actually hurts.
Yeah, maybe it hurts, but the intention is to make the society fairer. Right?
But you know, that's the whole idea with libertarianism, right? Intentions versus like outcomes, and so like most policies have great intentions.
Yeah.
But no libertarian will argue or will suggest changing policy that protects vulnerable groups. So I don't think that's a part of the libertarian agenda.
All right, next, do you have follow-up question? No, okay. So,
So my question is, like in marriage is a something of a group right, where two people and in my opinion even families are involved. So how in a libertarian society will that work? Because you are giving, either you are giving up your individual right for a group, what can I say, group agreement, marriage agreement, or you are doing both, or how does it work?
what is the question exactly? Can you just phrase it like simply?
As a libertarian woman who
Yeah.
believes in individual rights, gets into marriage agreement sanction, she thinks of balancing it out, but she is expected to give birth, or she is expected to not work, but or it's opposite. So how should she handle the things that she believes in individual rights to, but she is now in an institution of group rights?
I think Ekta, would you like to take this?
Well, you know, falling in love, getting married, having children, these are all innate to human beings. We're, you know, biologically, it is. But when you can't be a libertarian in every aspect of your life. When you decide to have a child and take maternity leave, everybody does that. It doesn't matter what your race is, or which society you come from, or what your nationality is. It's above, you know, we're libertarian in terms of like, we want minimal state intervention in our lives. You know, that's where we come in. But anybody's free to whether they want to marry, whether they don't want to have children. That's between you, your partner. Obviously, if you have very strong views, you will also find a partner who, you know, agrees with you on whether to have children, who stays at home, who makes money. And, you know, these are very personal, private things, and I don't think it has anything. You can't be a libertarian in every aspect of your life.
So as a company, if I run a company and some of employee gets married and she asks for individual rights, but she got into marriage or pregnancy as a group right. So now as a company, what should I do?
But it's not. There's no what.
Wait,
right?
what are you saying here? How is?
No. Wait. So it's. I think you're.
Okay, just hold on. Let's.
Yeah, so if you think about it this way, when you are not in units, right, then there is group, which is like this closed group that we want to have, our own family. That is group. And then we talk about society. And there is people who are not in units. And then there is love. So when we talk about political ideologies or libertarianism in that matter, we are mainly talking about reforming that societal and that governance circle. The individual and the core group remains the same. So when we are talking about libertarianism, it's mostly like political angle and governance and societal angle that we're talking about. And what we're talking about is individualism. And individualism again talks about the unit. And then a person can decide to have their own, basically to have the freedom of choice. So you can't apply, the governance or societal rules onto a unit and group.
So you mean to say the company and the individual employee should.
So if you are a company, you are employing a unit, to whom group is important. So you need to take, I mean, you can decide not to take care of the interests of that unit, but then that unit would decide to leave. That is the freedom. I mean, both of you have the freedom. You can decide to have that policy. Like nowadays, a lot of Gen Zs want, some different kind of systems or policies. People like the companies who are environmentally friendly. You can decide to not be environmentally friendly, but if the Gen Z is leaving you because of remote work or that kind of thing, it's their choice. Then
So why can't we do that similarly with the government?
How would that work exactly? And you know what surprises is that such questions will only come when you're talking about women. Like really, just think, how would you feel if you were as a man asked about this? And marriage being a group right, really? Or a social entity? All that is good, but there are so many arranged marriages that have broken down recently, so many love marriages that have broken down recently. So marriages, unfortunately, as much as I would like it to be sacrosanct, it has not remained so.
So my answer is, when a man goes into mines, when a man goes into work, it becomes human rights. But when a debate comes of women working, it becomes a woman right, not a human right.
And as I said before, it shouldn't be that. It should not be that way. I mentioned that.
Women construct a wall of a man versus woman. But in case of men, men make a line of humanity versus non-humanity.
Okay, sir, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I would advise that you look up the idea of biological feminism. Biological feminism. It's a very popular, famous theory which even Priyanka Chopra subscribes to. So, you would really like to understand why we are speaking this way and why we do construct a wall sometimes. It's really just that. All right, there's no dehumanization of the man here. Not at all. We love men. We need men in the society. Yeah, just saying. Okay, next question. More questions.
I think we can now invite all the panelists and we can have a combined.
Okay, combined question answer
All
session.
the
Please
panelists,
come on.
please come ahead and we'll answer the questions. Sir. We have the combined.
Combined है भाई 2 मिनट रुक जा सबको आने दे फिर करते हैं.
No, I think it's not. If you diet and you have like some kind of
It's important to tell them we want men in the society, we love them. Yes, we do. All right, I guess we can start. Are all the panelists up here now? All right, so we'll start with you because you were asking something already, and then we'll go around.
The very fact of going that way, if we're looking at government regulations for this growth, it becomes very unreliable. So how would we go? When you say you agree that the approach is needed and that certain law should be there, what do you have in mind? Is it how would you perform where certain issues are addressed by a general approach, but then we're still trying to keep it libertarian?
For me, it would be a case-to-case study of every law that we go on with for any gender, protecting any gender really. And I would ensure that no law is discriminating against men. See, the reason why we have such laws is because people think of stuff as, sorry about that, in a very oppressed kind of a binary. I don't subscribe to that binary and I don't think anyone should. Life is complicated, there are Venn diagrams everywhere. So we'll sit down, we'll look at every law on a case-to-case basis and ensure that nothing discriminates against men. The laws in India, they do need a reform.
I didn't mean that. So there are problems that women face.
Yeah.
What is gender approach? So is there certain laws that you agree should be there?
Yeah.
But then having such regulations by the very nature of it is unlibertarian.
Is what? Unlibertarian.
It's not libertarian.
Libertarianism does recognize that men and women are different.
No,
Like, there is
but
something
you're saying counting on the state at all, right? So the one thing, if you do count on a protection against violence, that is consistent with the libertarian view. And so, insofar as there's unique types of violence against women, maybe you want to have some accommodations for that. But beyond that, I think that's when it actually maybe just comes down. Like, I think that is maybe the part when people, I think, depending on who you ask, I think a lot of people, when they think of the violence angle, they're like, of course we need protections, but that is consistent with libertarian principles. From all of the other stuff like marriage, dowry, this, that, I think actually that just comes with a more equal society, which comes with more economic freedom. So I think you can have a totally consistent feminist and
And I don't think libertarianism discounts different strands of feminism. There are different strands. I was just recommending biological feminism to him. The same approach applies here also. There are certain categories of people who are disadvantaged, and to create a fair society, you need to provide them advantages. I think we are getting here to Robert Nozick's book on state, anarchy and human nature. I may be getting the title wrong. So Nozick talked about this. People were marooned on an island and they had to distribute resources amongst themselves. There were some people who were not as physically fit as the others. So you'd have to provide for some accommodations to make the society fair itself. It's a question of justice, not just feminism. It's a question of justice itself. You know? Well, it's Robert Nozick is one of the. He's actually a very popular thinker. He goes against Rawls, and he's a libertarian. So it's not just me. Robert Nozick also talks about fairness to the extent that everyone should have the same opportunity to participate.
I just want to know what you had in mind.
That's it. That's it.
Because treatment similarly has something called negative taxation.
Yeah.
It's sort of a universal basis.
But to your question, I think the idea of justice by Rawls and Nozick applies.
I just wanted to know what you had in terms of laws that you more or less.
Okay, that's good. Okay, next question.
I have a question. Can I ask from the panel?
Sure.
So my question, like you talked about how it's a. Do you think for the question of society versus the state oppressing women, do you think it's a function of money, where if the society becomes richer, if women become richer, and if families become richer, would they become more conducive to recognizing and like being fair towards women, or do you think it's a function of culture?
Like, it is economic, right? Every society, as it gets richer, it just coincidentally gets more equal. Like even societies which you would have said that are intrinsic, like let's say in the Middle East, which people might say had a lot of intrinsically discriminatory laws against women.
Yeah.
As their economies have risen, as they actually have become. And like Saudi Arabia has a higher workforce participation than India. So then female workforce participation. So I think that actually culture is not as static as we think, and one of the determinants of culture is how power is distributed. And money is one way power is distributed. So as that money gets distributed more equally, culture is huge. So and we just see this where like many of the laws to protect women in India, in like countries where women have more economic freedom, we wouldn't even think to have, like these laws would not seem as essential. Like these laws are not part of the discourse safely. So we do see that as we get more equality, like we need less and less.
Okay, can we have, yes sir.
So I have a question for all of you and you can answer.